Welcome to Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup. Tonight, we have a great guest on. His name is Paul Blake Smith. We've had him on before. He talked about his book, MO41, about the Cape Girardeau UFO crash in 1941. Well, tonight, it's long overdue because this book has been out for a little while, and I love this book. President Eisenhower's Close Encounters. To me, this was one of the most fascinating aspects of UFO lore or history. And this book, really, I don't think you can find another book that covers it as in-depth as Paul has. So if you're into the UFO phenomenon, into UFO history and lore, this is your show tonight, because, man, does this book really cover it. And Paul is such a great author and researcher. I've been looking so forward to having him on. I should have had him on almost, I think, a year ago when this book came out. But I got him now, and I cannot wait. I've been reading the book, looking so forward to that. But we are back tonight. I know we were on last Sunday. We had a delay for 2 weeks. I am going to warn you guys, there could be another couple weeks where we're gone. I got stuff going on in my life. I'm trying to work it out. I'm hoping we can keep doing the show. We'll see what happens. And I might be rushing to schedule guests once things are figured out, but we'll get there. We got a lot of weird to get to in the World Wide Web of Weird as well, and we will open up the phone lines later in the show. But a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get rolling on into it. Welcome to another night of Paranormal Soup. As I said before, I'm your host, Jason Bland. Tonight's guest is already here with us. Paul Blake Smith is going to join us, even for the World Wide Web of Weird, so we'll get his take on. I do have some UFO, alien abduction stuff in the World Wide Web of Weird to talk to. But joining me, as always, is my beautiful co-host, Jamie D. How you doing tonight, Jamie?
Doing great, thank you.
Glad to have you here. Hope you're feeling better. Thank you for joining
better.
us tonight, as always. Thank you. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Also joining us tonight from St. Augustine, Florida, is Rob Autry himself. How you doing tonight, Rob?
I'm doing.
You're doing, as long as you're doing here.
Yep.
And joining us, tonight's guest, and I'll give a little more information when we come back from the World Wide Web of Weird, but tonight, joining us for the World Wide Web of Weird, I hope he stepped away. Of course he did. Is Paul Blake Smith. That's his empty chair, but he'll be here with us. So, there he is. But yeah, we got a lot to get to in the World Wide Web of Weird. As I said before, I am having stuff going on in my life. I am going to hopefully keep doing Paranormal Soup. I'm trying to. Everybody who does donate to the Patreon Paranormal Soup, you are a big help paying the bills. People, you got Super Chat on YouTube. Those donations you do on there help pay the bills. So thank you guys. It's just if I can continue to keep doing it if I don't have a job. So That's what I'm facing. I am going to keep trying though, because this is my, this is my getaway from life. This is my vacation from my everyday chaos is this show. And, I don't know where I'd be without you guys in the chat room, without Jamie and Rob and these great guests like Paul. It takes me away. Gives me a special place, a place where I can talk about the things I care about, right? And I hope it does for you. That's why I do this for you guys. It's a forum for us all to come together. So just so you guys have an idea what's been going on, if there's a delay or we have to cancel a show or what's going on, there's things going on, just so you know. But we got a lot to get to in the World Wide Web of Weird. So let's go ahead and roll into the World Wide Web of Weird. Tonight in the World Wide Web of Weird, I thought I'd start out with a Dogman story I've been seeing going around a lot of the cryptid groups. And it's a photograph. I don't know, again, very blurry. I don't know. It isn't a great photograph, but maybe it's a story that matters to go with it. Kayaker claims to have photographed half-man, half-dog creature. This is from Unexplained Mysteries. And again, pre-warning now, the photo ain't great. For those listening on the Paranormal Soup radio network, we are a webcast. You can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, where we do show videos, pictures, and photos, but I'll try to narrate as best as possible. So first up, Kayaker claims to have photographed half-man, half-dog creature. The man had been out fishing in Australia when he captured the image. Is there a dog-like hominid stalking the wilds of Australian outback? One man, who has been identified only as John, certainly seems to think so. The story goes that John had been out fishing in his kayak on Boxing Day last year when he had an encounter that has since likened to reports of a half-dog, half-man creature, or dogman. This has been cited in the U.S. state of Michigan as far back as the 1800s. As we've had guests on to talk about dogman quite a bit before. I noticed that every time I took a stroke with the paddle of my kayak, whatever this thing was, it was taking a stride to each paddle I was taking, he told the Believe Paranormal and UFO podcast. The creature I actually got in the photo, and what I think is, I've spoken to a few people, and I reckon it's a dogman. After that, I couldn't go back to the area to check it out by myself. I was petrified for probably a month after it. I was waking up in the middle of the night and seeing a creature in my dreams. When he finally did pluck up the courage to return to the area to go fish again, he heard what he believed to be a large creature smashing its way through the bushes forward by a loud roaring noise. I heard about the dogman. I thought it was a joke, but I actually have had encounters with it now, and it's terrifying, he said. Unfortunately, the photograph he did manage to capture is inconclusive, showing an indistinct shape in the trees that could arguably be anything at all, or perhaps nothing more than a gap in the foliage. Nonetheless, John himself remains absolutely adamant that what he encountered was real. I'm not saying it's not. Photograph isn't the greatest. I mean, you do see, like, there's something there. I don't know. I just recently saw in one of the cryptid groups, somebody said they got this anonymously, had this video of this, like, dog-like creature. I'm like, that's pretty amazing. I don't know. But no provenance. This really is no provenance either because he's anonymous. I don't blame people for being anonymous with this kind of stuff. You do get criticized. You know, people have lives, and they have these experiences. It's not their everyday life. You know, they're not into the paranormal. They have this experience. They don't want to come out. I get that. But it is nice to have provenance, and when somebody does step up and say, yeah, I saw this, my name's this, and here it is, and this happened to me. So, you know, take it as B, crappy photo, interesting story. But I've been seeing it go around, a lot of people talking about it. Anything dogman, lately, it's you know, interesting to me. I don't know, I have an interest in the dogman. All right, next up. A man is found alive after night in a morgue freezer. We've had a number of these kind of stories before. We got a new one. Dead man is found alive after night in morgue freezer. A man in India who was involved in a motorcycle accident was not quite as dead as doctors believed. I believe the last time we had a story like this, it was in India too. Don't die. Don't half die or like think, you know, don't let something happen to you in India, obviously. They might think you're dead. 45-year-old Surkesh Kumar, who sustained serious injuries after being hit by a motorcycle in the Mordabad, if that's how you say it, was rushed to a private medical facility where he was promptly pronounced dead by a doctor. Not a good one. The emergency medical officer examined him, said the hospital superintendent. He did not find any signs of life and hence declared him dead. After the police were notified about his demise, his body was placed in a mortuary freezer to await a post-mortem analysis, which was scheduled to be carried out the following day. When his family arrived to initiate the paperwork for the autopsy, however, everyone was shocked to discover that Sirkesh was in fact very much alive despite spending 6 hours in the morgue, and it had to be damn cold. He was quickly rushed back to the clinic for treatment, where he currently remains in a coma. There's nothing. This is nothing short of a miracle, said Rajendra. The investigation has since been launched to determine how this could have happened. It's not clear whether or not he will survive the ordeal. Hopefully he does. And I'm sure the hospital's hoping he doesn't sue him. But hopefully he does survive. You know, imagine waking up. I mean, I don't know if he actually, the story's not clear if he actually woke up and was communicating and then went into a coma, or if he just had life signs when they found there. I'm guessing they had life signs.
I'm guessing life signs. I don't think he woke up.
I mean, obviously he was severely injured. But it's amazing that he was there for 6 hours and he was still clean to life with nobody taking care of him, nobody doing anything. I guess the cold probably helped him in that sense. Maybe slowed down his blood flow. He's not losing blood or whatever, but that's crazy. So don't get in a motorcycle accident in India. All right. Next up, we got some ghost alcohol abuse. All right. Watch ghost, and I got this from Coast to Coast. Spill a pint in a pub. Tim Binnall wrote this. Staff at a pub in England were shaken when a full pint of beer inexplicably tipped over seemingly by a hand of an unseen force that they believe could have been an establishment's resident ghost. The spooky incident reportedly occurred earlier this month at the Blue House pub in the town of Hedden, as the proprietor, Darla Anderson, and some of her employees were talking behind the bar. The conversation is suddenly interrupted by the shocking moment when the glass sitting next to the customer slowly moves a few inches and then topples over, spilling beer everywhere and causing one of the workers to cry out, "That was odd." Anderson later marveled that I was just looking at the pint and then it just fell. Maybe she psychokinetically did it. I don't know. There was only 3 or 4 of us in the pub at the time, so there was no way that anyone could have knocked it. While the first reaction one might have to the video is that condensation could have caused the glass to slowly slip, or perhaps the bar is not level, the pub manager dismissed these possibilities since it had been sitting on a mat designed to prevent the pint from sliding. There's just no way that it would just tip over, so it's very strange that it did, the bewildered Anderson mused. I just can't find any reasonable explanations of why it happened, or all of our customers cannot believe it. Pointing to a recent visit by a spiritualist who sensed a presence in the pub, it would seem that the staff had settled on a more paranormal explanation for the pint puzzling tumble, as they now suspect that a ghost could have caused the spill. That theory was bolstered after they posted the security camera video to social media, and the former owner of the establishment reached out to inform them that similar incidents used to occur there when she ran the bar. With that in mind, what's your take on the spill? This is close to AM. Well, I'll get your guys' take. Go ahead and roll that footage. It might be hard for people to see. I know I can't really zoom in on here. It looks like something pushes it over. I don't think that's condensation. And she said it was on a coaster, too. I mean, unless that was really unlevel bar, I don't think it would be.
Or if it's a frosted mug, you know, ice collects on the bottom sometimes, and it can make that little hump. And if it starts to melt, maybe it could slide. But I can't tell if it's frosted.
Alcohol abuse by a ghost. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Using the alcohol. But you wonder, what I think about this, I mean, you know, a ghost who can't drink. We watch a lot of the American and British version of the show Ghosts that came out. And those ghosts can't eat or drink, and they like to smell people's food. You know, that's all only kick they can get. They can't do anything. Imagine being an alcoholic ghost. You're trapped in a bar, probably died there or something, and everybody's drinking around you. Welcome to hell. You know, if you could just, you know, that frustration, knock over some guy's beer, probably felt really good.
Or
Seriously,
he's
though,
trying to
you're
get
not-
a drink and just dropped
Or
it.
he's trying to get a drink, yeah. Seriously, highly recommend the show Ghosts, British version or American version. All right, let's move on. All right, this one I think is probably explainable. I haven't seen the explanation for it, but it is interesting. Mysterious lights captured on camera over UK motorway. And I guess from Unexplained Mysteries. A woman who had been traveling with her partner along the M6 recently photographed something unusual in the sky. Kelly Thompson and Stuart Marshall had been driving between Liverpool and Manchester on November 18th at around 6:45 p.m. when they spotted something in the sky above them. The phenomenon, which consisted of dots, lines, and streaks, had the appearance of something being projected upwards from the ground. This is why I'm always highly suspect of these kind of things. And that image above it there is probably from the inside of their car. You're seeing reflected. But however, there was no sign of anything in the vicinity of lights that could explain what was producing them. We were just driving and saw these weird lights in the sky. I couldn't really explain it, said Kelly. At first thought it was something projecting in the sky from the floor, but I kept looking everywhere and couldn't see anything. When they drove directly under them, I took a picture because I couldn't explain it. I was baffled. I was in my car with my partner, and he could see it too and was wondering what it was. After the encounter, she checked online to look for possible explanations but could find none. Doesn't mean there isn't. And started trying to Google what I had seen, but it's hard to put into words, she said. I spoke to friends about it, and the first thing they said was, oh, it's a UFO, but I'm on the fence with that kind of thing. My thing, she checked on Google, it would be...
Drones?
No, I don't think it's drones. I would think it would be, an arena or some, I don't know the area. That's the thing. You would have to know the area. Are there any arenas or places where they'd have spotlights like this? They can travel quite a bit.
That was my next guess. Yeah. Was it like event lighting?
I mean, just possible explanations. I don't know if that's what this is. It is odd. I would have taken a picture of it too if I couldn't figure out what it was. So it is interesting. If that is UFO related, is that like a mothership and that's its lights coming through the clouds? I don't know. It's odd. It's odd. I'd be wondering if somebody else could step forward that is in the area that said, "Oh, this is spotlights from there." I mean, I've seen these come up and then they're explained as, "Oh, this was a car dealership doing a promotion and they had all these lights." Spotlights and stuff like that. I've seen it here. I'm like, what is that? I find out it's a big spotlights they had at a car dealership. Yeah. Those things can really project out far, and they look weird when you see them from a distance in the sky if it's cloudy like that.
And to catch your attention.
Yeah. Come buy a car. It's not a UFO.
Buy a UFO. We'll sell you anything.
Unless they're selling UFOs, and I'm coming. All right. Now we're flying too fast through it.
Yeah, whatever is down in the corner down here almost looks like
that's the car, like what's up there. That's a reflection in the car, which we've had several of those debunked on the show, and people are like, I got a UFO. I'm like, roll down your window.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do. If you roll down your window, you realize it wasn't a UFO. It was just that camera picture you took, a reflection of something inside your car or inside the houses too. Yeah. People are like, I looked back at the photo and realized they're a UFO. I'm like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
But this isn't a reflection of car. That's definitely something up there. Is explainable or not, I don't know. All right, moving on to the good stuff. Not really. This isn't good. I've talked about this on the show repeatedly about, all the UFO disclosure, and we'll definitely be talking about it tonight, right, Paul? We'll get into it. But I keep saying they're going to just come out with a new Project Blue Book. It's basically going to, it's not going to be the same as Project Blue Book. They can't explain things away with swamp gas anymore. But another project or another group in the government to basically quelch the UFO phenomenon, to basically explain away things, or to delay the inevitable release or acknowledgement of UFOs. Like, we're looking into it. Our best men. But we're not doing anything. We're not going to tell you anything. Well, here we go. Department of Defense has officially announced its latest effort to get to the bottom of the UFO mystery. Oh, I'm so confident in them. Known as the Airborne Object Identification and Management Synchronization Group, AOIMSG. I mean, can you make the title any longer? Really? The new unit will serve as a successor to U.S. Navy's Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force. According to the official release by the Department of Defense, the AOIMSG will synchronize efforts across departments and the broader U.S. government to detect, identify, and attribute objects of interest in the special use airspace, or SUA, and to assess and mitigate any associated threats to the safety of flight and national security. The Pentagon has also announced the formation of an Airborne Object Identification and Management Executive Council, AOIMEXEC. Like, why even abbreviate it? I think it's harder than saying the full name. Which will be made up of DoD and other intelligence agency officials, will offer a venue for U.S. government interagency representation. The official release also goes on to say, incursions by any airborne object into our SUA pose a safety of flight and operation security concerns, no really, and may pose national security challenges. DoD takes reports of incursions by any airborne object, identified or unidentified, very seriously and investigate each one. The decision is a result of planning efforts and collaboration conducted by the OUSD and other DoD elements as the direction of Deputy Secretary Hicks to address the challenges associated with assessing UAP occurring on our near DoD training ranges and installations highlighted in the DNI preliminary assessments. Man, a lot of anagrams there. Report submitted to Congress in June of 2021. Mark Rubio threw that in. They had to come up with a report which was basically worthless, like I said it would be. I don't think we're going to get much out of our government. I have no faith in our government. Honestly, from the very beginning of this whole, they're coming, the government's doing UFOs, I'm like, they're not. There's so much to hide. They know. Not the government, not your senators, not a lot of generals. There is a deep, embedded, dark group within our government that controls us, in my belief. And they're never going to let this stuff out because crimes were committed to keep it secret. And your faith in government would be completely lost if you knew the truth. I don't think it's more about, back in the day they worried that everybody would go crazy, people lose faith. It's not about that anymore. It's about control and power. And it was about that back then, but I don't think they're afraid about us going crazy about it. I think they're more afraid about losing their control over us, over what we think and what we do, if the alien factor is revealed. And also the fact that, you shouldn't trust your government. Look at all these things they did to hide this. They'll never admit to that. They'll never be I will seriously doubt they'll ever admit to all the things they did to keep this secret, to keep it covered up. And a lot of it's outside the government. A lot of it's contracted out to these private companies. It's all corporate. We'll talk about Eisenhower in his final speech, right? Military-industrial complex. This is all, and you look at Philip Corso's book, this was all handed out to private industries so the Senate can have a hearing and look into it. And we'll never know. We'll know when they land on the White House lawn, right? Or they'll land on a football field or something. And the aliens on their terms, but our government, their terms are, we'll never tell you until we have to. And even then we'll lie. We'll be like, oh, we were looking into it now. Oh, wow, yeah, we never knew. Bull. Okay. All right, we got two more. Now I'm running out of time. Okay. Last two are about alien abduction. First off, I really, people are making fun of this lady, pissed me off. Woman claims to have proof that she was abducted by aliens. And this is TikTok. I'm not a fan of TikTok, but I like this lady. She went on TikTok and shared her story. Sharia Lumeria Rejoice, who goes by a handle Sharia Rejoice on the popular clip-sharing platform TikTok, not only claims she has been abducted by extraterrestrial visitors, but she also has proof of this in the form of scarring from medical procedures that were performed on her. And I have people I know that are alien abductees that have the same proof. Her experience began around 3 years ago while attempting to sleep on her sofa, she recalls becoming paralyzed and encountering a mysterious visitor in her home. I was freezing and my body couldn't move, she said. I looked over at the door and opened it. There, a figure, a holographic-looking human figure, which I found really interesting. It's not your typical, I saw a gray. She sees a holographic human-like figure. Like I said, everybody's experiences are so important, all pieces of the puzzle. The guy told me you have 3 hybrid babies. You have 3 of your eggs taken. Initially, I had no idea of this until I met this man, and my intuition trusted me. I became sober from every stimuli you can think of, drinking, smoking, taking caffeine. I started going out into the nature a lot more, healing myself and my body. Ended up changing my entire name because of how drastic the change was for me due to this experience. As for the evidence, Sharina maintains an ultrasound scan will reveal ovarian scarring from where the aliens removed her eggs. You can believe me or you don't have to. Just know that not everybody lives in a scientific reality, and some folks live in a very spiritual way, and some experiences really do change people's lives. And this changed her life. I mean, she changed her name, she stopped doing drugs, stopped smoking, started eating healthy. It changed her life. And I think so many people out there have had these experiences. They don't speak up. They don't say anything because of the ridicule like this woman got when she went on TikTok. But, more power to her to come out and say, I've had it. I'm going to tell my story. I don't know why my phone's making noise there. All right, we're going to run out of time. Let me get to this last one. This last one is in Argentina. And I got this from Coast to Coast. UFO abducted woman in Argentina. UFO abducts woman in Argentina and returns her 40 miles away. In a bizarre story out of Argentina, a missing woman was found 40 miles from where she had last been seen and told authorities that her puzzling disappearance was precipitated by the sighting of a mysterious white light that some suspect could have been a UFO. According to a local media report, the very curious case began on Monday morning in the town of Querétaro. I can't say the name of the town here. Totally Going to butcher that. So, when the unnamed woman at the center of the odd account was reported missing, after a lengthy search, police wound up zeroing in on an area where they subsequently found the disoriented woman the following day, and she had quite the story to tell. Unable to speak as a result of the puzzling incident, she wrote a message explaining that she had gone out to her patio after hearing a strange noise emanating from her yard, then spotted an inexplicable white light. Amazingly, the woman claims that a few hours later, she woke up 40 miles away on the side of the road in the community where authorities ultimately found her. They knew to look for her there because upon her reappearance, the woman made several odd cell phone calls to friends and family where she said nothing, but they could hear a peculiar buzzing sound. The witness since has regained her ability to speak and is recovering in a nearby hospital, though she was apparently not provided any additional details on her disappearance. Adding a layer of intrigue to the case, a witness has come forward saying that they spotted an orderly bright light coming from seemingly out of a place, the object in the sky over the general vicinity where the disappearance happened. So there's a witness to the light. But the sighting appears to have taken place several hours after the woman had reportedly reappeared. As one might imagine, a weird account has piqued the interest of UFO researchers in Argentina, specifically Oscar Cuake Mario, who has stressed that he is not jumping to conclusions about the matter. He said that he also noted that the woman nor her clothes appear to be no worse for wear from the 40-mile journey, suggesting that she did not walk. Imagine waking up, you see a bright light, and you wake up 40 miles away, hours later or whatever, and you can't even talk. So she was like trying to call her friends, and she can't even speak. You know, some people, it could have been, you know why she probably lost her voice? Because what she can't remember is she was probably screaming her freaking head off when she was being taken. Wouldn't that be what you do? That's why I think she didn't have a voice. You know, if the government really wants to get into disclosure, let's find out about the alien abductions, because that seems, you know, we all worry about the airspace and all this stuff, but if people are being taken against their will, experimented on, their eggs taken, or whatever, it's a pretty big violation. You know, or was there a treaty signed by President Eisenhower that allowed all this? We're going to get into that tonight with our guest, Paul Blake Smith, with his book. I totally, highly recommend. Should get this over here. I have the book right here. Let me pull that up. There we go. President Eisenhower's Close Encounters. We're going to get into the night. If you are a fan of UFO lore, a history of UFOs, this is a must-have book. You must have this book. This is one of the greatest stories in UFO history. You know, right here. And I don't think there's another book that covers it in detail like that. So we're going to go to commercial break. When we come back, our guest, Paul Blake Smith, will be joining us, and we're going to talk about this and a lot more. He's got a lot of stuff he's written about. He's got 6 books out there. And the first one we had him on was the Missouri 1941 crash, which is, again, another book you should definitely check out if you haven't. But we'll be back after a short commercial break.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Of the second kind, physical evidence of a UFO. Close encounters of the third kind, contact. From Steven Spielberg, the director of Jaws, comes one of the most ambitious and unusual films ever made. And what you will see has never been seen before. It's a cosmic mystery crossing what many scientists believe will be the next threshold of human experience. It is called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It begins in an Indiana town and leads to one inescapable conclusion. We are not alone. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Certificate A. Now showing at the Odeon, Leicester Square.
The international chart-topping, haunted horror of Haverfordwest has been described as terrifyingly real, a must-read, shocking and chilling brilliance, genuinely worrying, utterly frightening. Don't read before bed. Described as one of the spookiest writers out there, best-selling author G.L. Davies presents Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest. The true paranormal account that is shocking the world. Dare you enter? Dare you read? Haunted Horror of Haverfordwest is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and wherever books are sold. Pray you never have to live there.
This is the sound of a space clock aboard a U.S. satellite 180 miles above the Earth. No one winds up this timepiece. It's powered by a tiny battery, a battery that delivers power for years without replacement. Now the same type of battery, the Duracell battery, can bring new reliability and long life to your battery-operated equipment. Radios, cameras, toys, all run far longer. Duracell batteries, the long-distance power cells, outlast any ordinary battery. The same type of battery that keeps space clocks running for years can bring long life to anything powered by batteries. Dura, as in durable. Cell, as in power cell. The Duracell battery, made by Mallory.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Switch to DCS range ring.
240, nominal to profile.
We're in the pipe, 5 by 5.
Tonight on Paranormal Soup, our guest is Paul Blake Smith. We're going to be talking about his newer book, President Eisenhower's Close Encounters. Paul Blake Smith is a 4 years mass communications major with an English minor from Southeast Missouri University. He previously authored the popular book MO41, The Bombshell Before Roswell, The Case for a Missouri 1941 UFO Crash, and 3 Presidents, 2 Accidents, more MO41 UFO crash data and surprises, released opposite end of 2016. We've had him on talking about that. And that's, again, if you haven't heard of the Missouri 1941 Cape Girardeau crash, definitely check out this book. I don't think there's any other book at all on it except for the one that Paul wrote, and it's a very interesting story, and he researched it thoroughly, which is really hard to do with these cases that happened so long ago. And there's not a lot of information, and all the witnesses are dead. Paul does his research, and that's why I highly recommend the book we're going to talk about tonight, President Eisenhower's Close Encounters. To me, this is one of the most important stories in the UFO lore or history. This might have been the beginning of the whole classified nature where we are now, why the disclosure movement sucks, because it started here. If President Eisenhower did meet with aliens, something was set forth from that moment on for why we were never told why they are here. Why do they keep secret? Why don't they land on the White House lawn? Well, I think this was taken care of. We're going to get into all that tonight. We will open up the phone lines later in the show after the next commercial break. If you got questions, call in tonight. There's a lot to get to, so let's go ahead and get to our guest. All right, let's bring our guest up here. How you doing tonight, Paul?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, like I said, I wish I would have got you on sooner, because, this book has been out for almost a year, hasn't it?
Yeah, 1 year. Came out in late November of last year.
And I think last year we talked about it, and I was like, yeah, I got to get you on the show, and then we lost track. I'm like, one, I want the book, and two, I need to have you on to talk about this. This is one of my favorite historically, I don't know what you want to call it, lore of ufology. We've heard about it. It's been mentioned on Ancient Aliens. It's Hangar 51 had a segment on it. Is this meeting or encounter that President Eisenhower had with aliens? We were talking, both of us haven't watched the show, but American Horror Story even recently, I guess, covered it in their way that they do. But this is like built in the fabric of all. It's connected to so much more too. That's what's so fascinating about it.
It is. It's like the most amazing story in UFO history. And I kept waiting decades for a book to come out. Where is a full-length book on this? So after I got tired of waiting, I decided to research and write it myself. And as you may have noted in the foreword, I started in fits and starts in the 1990s, then again in the early 2000s, and then again a few years ago, and I accumulated more information. And I had enough to fill a book, and I really love to cram in as much data as I can, as much sourcing and references or facts, and just try to leave out the wildest conspiracy theories. But sometimes you need a little conjecture, and I try to keep that reasonable too. So I think I try hard to give people their money's worth.
You really do. From the onset of the book, you can tell you're going through archives, you're looking for, the dates that, where was he at this time, who was involved, was this true? You don't speculate, you get into the actual archives and the data and the history, the real history. That's what I love about your writing about it. It's not just like, you speculate, maybe Eisenhower talked about this or that. No, you really get in. He was here. He had a history of manipulating the press, and I love the way you take you from the beginning to the end of this whole historical lore of President Eisenhower in this meeting.
That's right. Eisenhower used to brag to his friends how he would give double talk to the press to throw them off at press conferences. This was his fun hobby or pastime. So they wouldn't find out anything of his military plans when he was a general, or his presidential plans when he was in the White House. So that's one factor we have to wade through is he would, once in late 1954, he was asked at a press conference, what do you think about these UFOs, especially a big wave in France? And he said, well, my military advisors tell me there's nothing to that as a otherworldly source. He didn't give his own opinion. He ducked and pushed everything on a mystery military advisor. So that was one way of ducking and evading, because in those days you just didn't talk about it. You couldn't come out. People in government were afraid that it would touch off the proverbial panic. a mass panic that would send people into the streets, or at least you would quit your job or quit school or ditch your religion. And we have to emphasize, President Eisenhower was a remarkably religious man. He was a very devout Christian, and in fact, our first president to be baptized while in office. So that, as a Christian conservative, meeting with extraterrestrials, you can predict the outcome of this. It was like, you're going to have to leave, is basically.
Get off my lawn, is what I picture.
Eisenhower. We don't want you around right at this time. We're not ready for you.
Well, I think what's funny about his comment to the about the sightings that were happening in France at that time is his military advisors that they're what did he said that they are that we're not being visited for or something, but they're not they're not possibly from another world. Yeah. Like he's telling you the truth in double speak. Yeah. Like he's not saying that they didn't come here. There's not saying there's not a presence or UFOs. He's not denying that in that statement. He's saying they didn't come from another planet.
Yeah, even the New York Times noted in an article in this, Eisenhower ducked giving his own opinion and pushed it off on like my military advisor, who he did not name, so no one could follow up. So he was a very clever, insightful man. Eisenhower was certainly no dummy. He masterminded the war effort in Europe in World War II and put all these forces together from different countries to wipe out the Nazi war machine. He was the most popular man in America, maybe on Earth, with ticker tape parades in his honor, and people mobbed him wherever he went after the 40s and early 50s. It was a no-brainer to elect him president. He was a shoo-in, and he won in a landslide. So if you were an extraterrestrial being coming to this world, who's the number one guy with the most power and influence you would want to talk to? Well, Dwight Eisenhower, the president of the United States, easily the most popular and recognizable man on the surface of the planet, I would think.
And at that time, you're talking about America's full frontal, we're going full nuclear weapons. We're going to give them the Turkey. We're going to give them the France. Everybody gets a nuclear weapon that's on our side. Yay! Let's test and blow up a bunch of stuff. And if this is a theme, his comment there, the France, if that means the aliens are here, living here in some sense or form, that puts them in danger. And who are you going to want to talk to? You're not going to want to talk to France. You're not going to talk to England. You're going to talk to the countries producing these nuclear weapons. And the president is in charge at that time. And here we are. And
that's right. Yeah, good point. That what was the agenda for the aliens to land, risk everything, and maybe even be attacked or something?
Right.
Which they apparently kind of were. We'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah.
When you read that in the book, I'm sure you were surprised that somebody didn't get the memo to greet them cheerfully. But anyway, their point of view was you're destroying your planet, first with pollution in general, and second with your nuclear bomb testing program, which Eisenhower was in charge of, and he was very enthusiastic. They were exploding bombs in the air, the upper atmosphere, lower, down in the ground, and setting them off under the ocean with all this radiation just recklessly pouring forth.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently this was the big sticking point for extraterrestrials who were observing us and decided to get involved with a face-to-face meeting, is you got to stop doing this. You're destroying your planet. And I think possibly that radiation was leaking into outer space and maybe even affecting other worlds. I don't know. But that's an interesting theory.
See, you hear reports that 72 different alien species, and there's all these aliens here. If they are, then they're living here. They're not just visiting. There's at least some of them living here, and then they got a stake in this planet. And if we're bombarding it with radiation from nuclear weapons, then that really is going to get them to step up. I mean, look at World War II. I mean, there's all the Foo Fighter reports. Here we are. That's before nuclear weapons. But Nazis were trying to get to that point. If they could have got a nuclear weapon, things would have been real bad. But here we are causing all this death and just chaos, destruction, and it feels like we woke something up or we got their attention at that point.
If you are a scientist coming to this world, and I'm sure some of them were, and maybe still are, to observe us, you've got to be aghast at the radiation and the pollution, the nuclear fallout that's coming from these bombs that they're just detonating left and right. There was a big program called Castle, The Castle Detonation Program, Eisenhower was in charge of in 53 and 54. And that had to have been of great concern to any scientific mind from another world here to observe us. And so they really felt it was important enough to just sit down in private in a prearranged meeting. It was not impromptu, I'm convinced, to speak to President Eisenhower, who was friendly. And another interesting point, Eisenhower actually was our first president to have a pilot's license. He could fly craft, you know, and he could know all about them. He had to learn about them for the World War II effort and as president to know what they could do aerodynamically. So he was easily the go-to guy in all American history to that point, to talk to knowledgeably, sensibly, and calmly and informed on the subject of aircraft and what they can do. And boy, did he get an eyeful that night, as you read in the book.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, I mean, there's a number of instances, and I don't know how we want to start this kind of story, but there's previous instances before he became president.
Right.
There's the one on the Navy ship.
Right.
And then there's the Churchill conversation. So there's some pre-knowledge for him or involvement in UFO. Not even deeper than that, honestly, because then there's the Aztec thing. We got a lot. There's a lot to get into, but there seems to be a lot of pre-involvement and knowledge by Eisenhower in this.
Yeah, I tried to put all the stories in the book because they fit together, but that gives us plenty to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
We probably should start with World War II and Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Not the rock group, but the original name that they gave these lights, orbs, daylight discs, they call them, flitting about in the skies in Europe in World War II. And just previous to that would have been the Cape Girardeau crash outside of my hometown. But we'll get to that in some other show. But anyway, by the early 40s, there's so many sightings. They actually issued a press release from Eisenhower's office. I'm not sure if he dictated it or not. And then there's the big Eisenhower-Churchill meeting, which, according to an eyewitness many years later, saying that they discussed this UFO, this craft that was hovering over, I believe, an RAF bomber over the English Channel, and that's not supposed to happen. And what do we tell the public? And Eisenhower and Churchill agreed, don't talk about it. When in doubt, cover this up. It would upset the church, people's faith, in their way of life, and that they would find out we are not in charge of the skies. We're being outflown and outmaneuvered, and we can't let that out to the public.
And they're middle of a world war.
Yeah, a war effort where we have to keep our spirits up and not have people questioning our leadership or our war efforts. So that the eyewitness says that Eisenhower and Churchill agreed, and I think that was their basic MO for the rest of their lives. Just when in doubt, cover it up and don't talk to the public about it.
And he's military. You know, they're used to keeping secrets. They're, you know, I mean, look at the Manhattan Project. You know, they're used to keeping secrets, and you don't need to know. You know,
how
that
about
mentality.
The Greenbrier Hotel bunker. You're familiar with that story.
Oh, yes.
That was under Eisenhower's watch. This whole thing went on practically under the eyes of all these guests at the Greenbrier Hotel in West Virginia, a huge nuclear bunker for U.S. Congress.
Nobody knew it was there.
Their wives. And, you know, it was like an enormous facility. And they told them, well, we're doing a few repairs to the hotel. And that remained a secret for decades and decades.
Yeah.
So don't tell us that the government creates secrets and keeps them for a long, long time. Maybe beyond our lifetime, we'll learn plenty more what went on in Eisenhower's day.
Do you think Eisenhower, and I think I cover this in the book, he had some connections to 1947 Roswell crash as well?
That could be, yes. He was the Army Chief of Staff for President Harry Truman, and he would have had access to intelligence files. And he was the most trusted man in America, the hero of World War II. Who else would you go to? And so if you go to majesticdocuments.com, you see a few typed up memorandums that mention Eisenhower says this and Eisenhower says that. And I put them in the book regarding the Roswell crash recovery. So I think he had a hand, maybe from a distance. He might have gone there. According to one eyewitness, he was there looking over the material next to Howard Hughes, the famous
I've
billionaire
heard that.
aircraft, aviation expert. And that kind of makes sense. Supposedly there's film footage of this. It has not surfaced yet, but the man who saw it said, I was just like chilled to the bone by what I saw. I'm really frightened, like, for his life. And even today, if that footage gets out, and it hasn't so far.
Yeah,
So Eisenhower would have known about that. If we want to go back just a bit, I don't think he knew about the Cape Girardeau encounter of late April 1941. Eisenhower was like a colonel in Washington State. He was not nearly as elevated in military status and esteem at that time, pre-war. It was the war that really did great things for his career.
And he's somebody, I mean, he was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, which is supposed to be supposed to be pacifist,
Yeah,
and he never actually fought or battled or did any actual, military. He was a bureaucrat in
As
a
I
sense.
pointed out, from an early age, he loved to read books on the military as a little boy. His mother was a pacifist, took those books and hid them in the attic. Cover this up. Don't talk about it.
Right.
So that laid the foundation right there for the rest of his life. How do you handle a problem? Cover it up and don't talk about it.
Yeah, like I said, I think he was the perfect president at the time to keep this all covered up and to set up the institution of plausible deniability, and where it got funneled out. And I've always talked about on the show, I think he, at the end of his administration, we can get into that later, felt it was a mistake because the U.S. lost control.
Yeah.
When you hand it out to corporations, who's to say they're not going to share that information with your enemy?
That's
They're all
right.
about money.
We would refer your viewers to the famous Eisenhower farewell speech of January of '61, where he warns of the military-industrial complex having an undue influence on American policy, how we're all geared for war, and making war weapons is very profitable for a small handful of people who are very powerful. And he tried, as a man of the military, to explain this, and I don't know if enough people listened to him back then, I'm afraid.
Obviously not. But I always felt like he was trying to say more. And there's been rumors that he was going to say more, but was squashed. So all he could say is, well, we need to be aware of the military-industrial complex. Hey, they got UFOs. But you love him or hate him, I got to love him for the final speech, trying to say something, a warning. And I honestly think from his own mistakes.
He did live another 8 years, and he could have opened his mouth and said something, or even on his deathbed in March of 1969. Apparently, he said nothing. If he did, they sure won't let that out. He was a military man through and through, and what's their policy? Loose lips sink ships. So you just didn't talk. Not if you wanted to keep your pension, your health care plan, even when you're retired, to keep your reputation as a solid citizen. So
protect your
he had
children.
every incentive to keep his mouth zipped.
Protect his own children too. They have careers and lives, and he can't ruin it for them. It could be looking at the crazy old ex-president, former president's just losing his mind or something.
That's another factor. As he was growing older, would people think he was nuts, that he'd lost his mind if he talked about these things? So he had, again, just every incentive in the world to keep it quiet.
Truman, after he was out of office, did make a statement or two about UFOs.
Yeah, in his last months in office, I point this out in the book, it's just astonishing. You can see the video on YouTube.
Yeah.
That Truman was asked by reporters on camera. He says, oh, yes, we've had flying saucers and whatnot. We discussed it with the military at every conference we had. I couldn't believe he said this.
Yeah,
if there's nothing to UFOs and we're not being visited and it's all a lot of hogwash, why are you admitting you discussed this matter with military brass, the top of the top of military that meets with the president at every conference? And he meant, oh, we've always had these things going on. I'm sure his aides just wanted to muzzle Truman right there on the spot. Shh, don't talk about this. So he did say this. You can see the video online. That was in like July 52, and there was a big flap of alien ships or UFOs
over Washington, D.C.
Over the Capitol building, over Washington, buzzing around. And well, that was a very strange incident that, they came up with what? Radar returns or a flock of seagulls?
Yeah, they had the press conference. They had a press conference on it, and they tried to explain it away. And then there was another UFO researcher at that time that tried to go on air and speak about it, and they cut him off. Like
Right.
you just see his mouth moving. You don't even know what he says.
Yeah.
Who was it? I can't remember the name.
Keyhole, Donald Keyhole.
Donald Keyhole.
Yeah.
Yes.
They cut his mic on CBS when he started to get into that. What a
Yeah.
surprise! Oh, no censorship
Right.
in this country. Yeah.
Yeah, we can get into as we get into the actual meeting. There's another radio show host at that time that tried to talk about and lost his job too.
That's right.
It obviously. Oh, the media's not controlled. It's been controlled for a long time.
Yeah.
Frank
obviously. Edwards was his name, and he started
Yes.
to talk about the Eisenhower rumor he was hearing. And what a coincidence. He got cashiered, and he barely got regular work for the rest of his life. It'll cost you for speaking out. And so I think he paid a pretty big price.
Yeah, and he had an interest in UFOs, talked about it on his show. Yeah. It wasn't until he said something about Eisenhower in this meeting that they finally said, okay, that's enough, you're canned.
Yeah, right, exactly. This would have been red hot news that he would have wanted to get out. He did discuss it, and boy, his life took a sudden sharp turn for opening his mouth on that one. Frank Edwards was like the Art Bell of his day.
Yeah.
He had like over 1 million listeners. People tuned in to hear his news, and because he would discuss UFOs and possible alien visitation calmly, reasonably. He wasn't hysterical or exaggerated or crazy. And so a solid newsman giving these reports probably really rattled a lot of minds in Washington.
Well, and at that time, too, he's got 1 million listeners. I mean, they're literally throwing money away by canceling him and firing him. There goes all those listeners. There goes all that advertising and everything you set up to do his show, and you canned him for this. So they literally were willing to throw away money to silence him.
I guess so. It's a little scary. Also, I heard that Frank Edwards had more to say, and he was at a kind of UFO conference, I think in '67, and they suddenly found him dead in his bed at like this hotel. I don't know, natural causes or not. It was, I think, the same day Jackie Gleason died, like 15 years later or something like this.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
like June 24th. It's just
that's a whole other story we're gonna get into.
Yeah.
We got to get into that later.
There's another great story. Yeah, yeah.
All right, so this meeting, that happened, you talk about it being prearranged, and that gets me back to kind of the Truman era too, because some people said the first meeting happened with Truman.
Yeah, I was surprised to read this too. I've never heard this before. That there's a few sources, at least, that claim that Truman was actually the first to meet and greet an alien, maybe for a few hours or face-to-face under heavy guard. I don't know if that story is true. I sure wish I had more support or reference for it, but it's intriguing. And that's where we get to the story of Septimus, the rescued alien, very human-like and friendly, from a 1948 crash at Aztec, New Mexico.
And that's an interesting. Our friend Heather Wade got these documents from. They were supposed to be from 1989 Defense Intelligence Agency that tell this whole story. And I've had people that have criticized the documents. I think they're legit, and they do tell the story of the Aztec crash and an living alien, recovered.
Yeah,
that spent
really
some time.
Detailed. Did you notice the detail in there? The level of how they accessed the craft and who was there precisely, and how difficult it was, and what they found, and how they rescued one soul or one grown adult human-like alien. They gave him the name Septimus, at least that's what he said his name was. He spoke English. He was in a sleep state, and they woke him up in this recovery process. And who would you have turned to if you were Harry Truman to handle this delicate matter? Would it have been military honcho Dwight Eisenhower? And so I gave the reasons in my book where I think it would have been logical for him to have spoken with this human-like alien, and I think Truman did too, according to this leaked document from 1989, a Defense Intelligence Agency document. Truman did talk to him, and in a rural part of Vermont that Eisenhower was quite familiar with. What a coincidence.
Right, he would go fishing there, right?
To go hunting and fishing in rural Vermont. So he disappeared for about 2 months, according to biographers. Dwight Eisenhower, he was president of Columbia University at the time, and he supposedly had this health crisis, and it all hangs together. but I'll admit it's still circumstantial.
It is.
Story.
But it is interesting. It feels like, the meeting was prearranged, and Eisenhower was the chosen president to do this with. That he had to have, he had to have foreknowledge of the alien presence and experience. Can we cover a little bit too? We got a half an hour till the next commercial break, but I want to get into Eisenhower, Palm Spring, his trip to Palm Springs and all that. But there's some important stuff you get in this book that I some stuff I didn't know beforehand. I've heard of, but you really do the research on it. Like the Navy when he was on what was the ship?
Yeah.
Where they see a UFO. I mean, a witness came out about this. You want to talk a little bit about that?
I certainly can. That was from like January of 1952. Eisenhower was a private citizen. He had not decided to run for office, which he decided within a month, maybe weeks of this incident. He was following President Truman's orders to go in a military inspection tour of various bases and installations and ships that America had in Europe, and decided to go on the USS Franklin Roosevelt, which I think had nuclear weapons. And while he was on that ship and visiting the bridge, he was looking for a cup of coffee because he couldn't sleep. They said, "Look out there." And outside, according to an eyewitness in a 1997 story for a newspaper, they all stared in wonder at this circular silver spaceship hovering in space or in the sky over the Franklin Roosevelt in a choppy sea. It was storming and raining, and they could see it quite clearly, especially through flashes of lightning. And the darn thing just didn't take off for like 10 minutes. It was a very sustained sighting. And it sounds very exciting. I'd like to see some still photos if someone had a camera or some home movie camera image, if that could get leaked or hacked. But
do you think on the Roosevelt there had been somebody doing that though, like having a camera there? You think that would be possible?
Under military restrictions, they probably confiscated that pretty quick, and that was that. But Eisenhower said, well, after the thing just silently hovered and took off, he said, "Gentlemen, let's keep this under your hat and I'll look into it." And the author of the article, who said he was there, said Eisenhower never got back to us and we never heard from him again. We were ordered to just keep our mouths shut. And he wanted to tell the story in the late 1990s before all of his crew members passed away and the story was lost. And that's the way a lot of these tales, I think, end up becoming known as, well, I'm the last man standing. I better get it out before I'm gone. And so we've got that going for us.
Yeah, no, I think those are the most important. I mean, more than the documents that we get, they're like, are these real or are these fake? These gentlemen that were in the military at the end of their life coming out and telling their experience or what they saw or what they were told not to talk about, and they have nothing to gain. They have nothing to gain by telling this experience. That guy had nothing to gain. He didn't make any money. He passed away, probably not long after that. He wanted to get this out before he was, left this earth. To me, those are, the most important of the data we can get.
Yeah,
from these
and
people.
you're taking a real risk that if your identity is discovered, the military could, reprisals would take away your pension, your health care plan. If you have a so-called death plan or a funeral plan, and you wanted to be buried with honors in a service at a military cemetery, all of that would have been on the line. Your way of life and your way of death would have been jeopardized by coming forward. And so what motive did he have? Just to get the story out and tell people the truth. This really happened. Aboard this ship, Eisenhower and the other men were staring at this circular alien craft. There was nothing like it. It seemed completely unaffected by the electrical storm and the rain and such that was going on at the time. So it's an impressive tale, but I wish we had more support, more backing, a leaked photo, etc.
I know you don't speculate very much about anything else besides what you can do research on, but I'm a speculator, and I always wondered about this incident because I've heard about it. The fact that he woke up in the middle, or couldn't sleep that night, or it makes me wonder if he was having contact or if he was a contactee. We will never know. But before the reason why they chose him, I mean, that UFO could have been there because they had nuclear weapons on the Roosevelt, or it could have been there because he was there. That they
That's
knew he'd be
all
the one.
true. We could speculate plenty. I always thought of he got up in the middle of the night. I think it was the graveyard shift because he couldn't sleep because the boat's rocking and he's not.
That's true.
It's a storm and
Right.
he can't sleep and he wants some coffee. And that's why he went up to the bridge. And I'm sure everyone just snapped to, yes, sir. You want coffee right away, sir. And so when they saw what they did see, and I'm sure they're all looking at each other like, what do we do now? Do we open fire on it or we take pictures? And he just apparently told them, keep your mouth shut and I'll look into it. And how much he did, I don't know. There's a video online of the USS Franklin Roosevelt had other UFO incidents over the years into the 50s and early 60s. I don't know what it is about that ship other than, like you point out, it had nuclear weapons on board. And we've seen so many UFO stories about them, UFOs hovering over nuclear missiles or missile sites or bases that have our finest weaponry and technology and disabling them. And I just kind of wondered, did something like that happen during the FDR,
right?
The Eisenhower incident? That would have been quite a hoot to find out. They go down into the ship and find out their weapons have been disabled during this 10-minute flyover.
How many times have you heard that there's underwater UFO bases? I mean, that would be a place to hide. And here you are taking the Roosevelt with nuclear weapons over, in the ocean, and you're don't know it, but you're over a UFO underwater base, and here you are now a threat to them because they can detect the nuclear missils. I know speculation.
Yeah,
but my imagination goes crazy with this. This is why I can't believe this story is not like a major movie. I mean, like we said, American Horror Story just recently had it, but I can't believe somebody hasn't done a fictionalized, really gone out there with this story. It's so incredible. Now, for it to be prearranged too, there's the other aspect of this that you talk about in the book, is that they had some kind of way of communicating with the aliens.
Right. That's even according to a state congressman from New Hampshire named Henry W. McElroy, who made his own video and talked on camera like I am here about how I got to look at these documents, official government documents. They were supposed to be secret, that said Eisenhower was approached with the plan or the proposal to go and meet with extraterrestrial beings. We've discovered that they're friendly, non-threatening, and they want to meet us face to face. And the documents this man said he read urged Eisenhower to go, and McElroy said, it's my understanding Eisenhower did go. So there's another support. Why would this congressman risk his reputation and his pension and his government status by going forward and making this video? I think he was telling the truth, that it's an amazing story, but this may have been how the Eisenhower encounter was set up, because the congressman said there was some sort of high frequency radio communication with the extraterrestrials to set up a time and place in private. They had to settle on an air base where there would be a landing strip and no citizens, public private citizens around, very controlled, and to set a specific time and date. And they decided on Muroc Dry Lake Bed, Edwards Air Force Base in California. That was very remote, out in the middle of nowhere. Alien ships could come and go almost unnoticed, especially at night. And so that was the site. And so they set up Eisenhower to go on a golf vacation, 2,700 miles from Washington, D.C. He just had to go play golf in Palm Springs. It's a pretty lame excuse when you think about it now and you understand the whole story, that he needed
at taxpayers' expense.
Taxpayer expense to go loafing in Palm Springs, waiting for this landing. And apparently on Friday, February 19th, 1954, he got the call. According to base officials, they're here and they're friendly. They've shown no signs of attacking or assaulting anyone. I kind of wonder if they didn't even go out on the tarmac and speak to them. The aliens spoke English, and apparently they were not armed, and even inviting, like, you want to come aboard our ship and look around yourself. And once the military base officials were very certain that coast is clear, they looked pretty friendly. Eisenhower was not a coward in any way. He was a courageous war hero. Although it is interesting to note, he never saw battle.
That's what I said earlier. Yeah, he never saw any battle.
It's a very strange twist of fate. We think of him
Yeah.
as a great, brave military man. He never fired a shot. He never saw battle. Well, that made his pacifist mother very happy. I'm sure.
Right?
But he was a great strategist, and this is the plan he put forward: to be out on a golf vacation, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and just happened to sneak out at night and fly to Edwards Air Force Base, which was about up to 90 miles away. And it was a short flight, and he went there, and he went for it. He got the experience of a lifetime.
And this date we'll talk about later, 2 February 19th, 1954, is like it's an anniversary date for some other presidents too. I want to get into.
That's you really
know,
cool part of it.
It is really cool. Like like there was like a treaty or something signed, and that's what everybody speculated. Nobody knows what that conversation was between Eisenhower and these human-like aliens, and it is the description, right? Generally, is that they were not the Greys or reptilians; they were very human-like.
Right. There is something I'm sure you've seen, the Army Special Operations Manual 101, and it describes 4 different races that are coming here. It was from April 1954, probably put together in the weeks after the Eisenhower encounter at Edwards Air Base. And it described one of the aliens as very human-like, about 5 foot tall, fairly well muscled, with only a little scruff on the tops
Like
of their
fuzz
heads.
or something.
Yeah, that they really didn't have hair and that they were friendly. And I think that we can rely fairly much on that as the description of what Eisenhower met and who he was talking to, that they probably had flight suits and that they were smiling and friendly and open about everything and honest and exuded good vibes, and that they looked a good deal like humans. You could nearly pass them off as humans if you were walking down the street or going somewhere. I don't know if they ever tried that, but I'm sure that worries a lot of Pentagon people, that if
Right.
they look that human-like, what else could they try while they're here?
Could start a witch hunt.
Yeah.
Like
So
who's really
Eisenhower
you
did
alien?
meet with them and was not afraid, but he did keep himself surrounded, according to an eyewitness, by 6 bodyguards. And I looked up in Eisenhower's digitized presidential records, and he just happened to have a contingent of Georgia State Highway Patrol troopers fly in special for February 19th to help with a security detail that they couldn't spell out in the records. And I'm thinking, these are the guys that Eisenhower used when he went to play golf in Augusta, Georgia. He was wild about golfing an Augusta National Championship course there. He went there dozens and dozens of times. So why else would Georgia State troopers be flying in? He was quite familiar and comfortable with them, and I
trusted
think
them.
they are the ones who were the bodyguards at the meeting, probably in civilian attire, to be undercover and not wear Georgia uniforms. What will you be doing in Southern California otherwise? So
Why would he? Yeah, I mean, he has Secret Service, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
not.
I'm
This
sure
is
he had
pre
some of those
JFK,
present,
but
yeah.
but
That's,
to call these guys in, he felt he needed people he trusted. He probably was very familiar with every single one
Right.
of the men that were there, and felt that they could keep their mouth shut.
Right, I'm
about.
sure.
So
a couple
they
of
were
Secret
there.
Service men were around, and that probably blew their mind what they saw. According to at least one eyewitness, there were film cameras set up
Right.
and newsreel cameras to capture this big event, which again shows you that this was not an impromptu affair. This was
Right.
set up carefully. And according to one reporter who looked into that story, some of the film is in black and white and some of the film is in color. I think it's the black and white one, which the film suddenly stops. Supposedly, the extraterrestrials' technology interfered with the camera and caused it to break down. So that's an interesting theory. But again, there's a new, fairly new movie out. It's like an independent movie called The 11th Green.
I know, so
And
gotta
it
see
shows in its advertisement these cameramen rolling
Yeah.
away in this Air Force hangar while Eisenhower greets the aliens.
I think
with
that's
some
on Amazon.
bodyguards around him. Yeah. Christopher Munch is the name of that
Yeah.
director-producer, and he
Love to
did
get
a
him.
fine job. It's not a major motion picture like you would see in a very similar story. We can get into this later. Close Encounters of the Third Kind by
Oh, yeah.
Steven Spielberg. Where was that filmed out in an air
Right.
base out west, and landing and friendly aliens that step out, Air Force officials. It had almost everything except President Eisenhower in that story.
Right. I mean, it takes place later, but that Spielberg we've talked about on this show a lot. Have you ever? I have to ask you this, and I don't know. I might have asked you when you've been on the show before, just to get because you brought up Spielberg. I have to mention this. Close Encounters of the Third Kind to me felt like it's very similar to when you read about the UFO coming. These UFOs coming down the ships and on their base. It is like the Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Steven Spielberg did a miniseries that I truly love. I own it on box set. It was all about the history, in a sense, of the alien abduction phenomenon. It was called Taken. Have you seen that?
I have not, I regret to say. I need to get a
You
hold
really
of that
need
because,
to.
like you, I suspect Spielberg knows plenty,
Yeah.
and he puts things in kind of generic, semi-fictional form, but I think he knows a lot.
And what I really feel like Taken, it follows three families. One is a alien hybrid family from the crash at Roswell. The alien ends up doing the nasty with some farmer chick. They have a kid, and that's an alien hybrid, and then the generations go down for the alien hybrid. The other one's an alien abductee family. They're being taken by the aliens. And then the third part I felt like is the most important part that I felt Steven Spielberg was touching upon is this general who starts out as a colonel, lieutenant colonel at Roswell, and manipulates his way through all of his evil doings to take over the whole UFO project eventually. And then he hands it down to his son, who then hands it down to his daughter. And it all ends up being out of the military in this private corporation, and nobody in the government hardly knows they exist. And I felt like Steven Spielberg was trying to point out that the reason we don't know, the reason that your senators don't know, the reason that your top generals don't know is this has been lost because now it's within the families.
It's compartmentalized. Lots of people don't know a thing, and they can stand there and tell you, we don't have any files on this. And they could well be just thinking that's the truth, but they don't know a lot of stuff has been buried or locked up. To backtrack a little bit, the Cape Girardeau UFO crash of late April 1941 happened between Cape Girardeau and, I'm convinced, a small town named Chaffee, Missouri. Steven Spielberg used to fly into the Cape Girardeau airport right nearby.
I remember you said this.
And with his girlfriend turned wife, Kate Capshaw, and go to Chaffee, Missouri, and pick up her daughter from another relationship, Jessica Capshaw, who became a very famous actress. They had to have driven right past this UFO crash of 1941, and I want to know, did Spielberg know what was right nearby when they were going in and out of the Cape Girardeau airport to pick up and drop off this budding young actress who was a little girl living in Chaffee at the time? It's intriguing. I've been told, I have a show business friend who has a friend that would you be interested in this Eisenhower story? And the friend of a friend said that I know Steven pretty well, and he's saying that he's out of the UFO movie business. He doesn't want to make another one. So
I think Taken was probably his last take on it, which was a miniseries he did on TV, which I truly love. It's not that it's historically accurate. It's just that he tries to set the premise of how, one, this is hidden in the military, and two, what the alien whole abduction phenomenon is.
Well, Mr. Spielberg tries to base his movies on real life information. He got stuff.
He talked to Hynek.
Dr. Alan Hynek, who I read in an article, knew about the Eisenhower encounter and wanted to know more. This was about 1982. And he also, Spielberg also got information, Dr. Jacques Vallée. So he based everything on these real life reports.
Oh, yeah.
And he said it, some of it in your part of the world, Indiana. Did they do filming there? Do you happen to know?
I don't know if they actually filmed in Indiana for that. I really don't know. I mean, it takes, Dreyfus's character is in Indiana,
right?
When it happens. But I don't know if they actually filmed here. I don't know. I'd love to
And
know.
then there's the great story that Spielberg said a couple of years ago. It is true. This rumor
Reagan.
that Ronald Reagan viewed the movie E.T. and turned to him and said, "Well, you don't know how real this movie is." And that rumor went around for a long time.
A long time.
And Spielberg finally confessed, it's true.
Yeah.
He did tell me this with a straight face. And there were astronauts and cabinet members in the room at the time, and he had to have been just blown away. And I think, once again, Spielberg knows plenty.
I think so. I mean, I think our media and Hollywood have big, they're in a sense propaganda machines and control machines for them, the government or whatever. But there's an influence there, and some of those directors get some knowledge. They want certain things influenced upon the public. I mean, we went through the 1950s. You know, of course you had War of the Worlds. Look at that. You know, you go back to the original radio play that's supposedly scared a bunch of people, and then you have the movies. But The Day the Earth Stood Still, you know, that was like alien. Right, great movie. And what did they come here? Because our nuclear weapons. But then after that, you get all these monster horror kind of aliens are here to kill us movies. And then you're back to the Spielberg kind of changes that flow again with Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T., which is much more friendly.
Yeah.
Like, is that what they like, hey, we're going to take this director. We're going to let him, he's got an interest in this. Let's help him. Let's make sure he keeps it, you know, E.T. friendly, you know, and change people's minds through Hollywood. Speculation, but it's always been a wonder of mine. I would, love to get Steven Spielberg in a closed room, but like, listen, just tell me, man. Just tell me, what do you know?
We're not going to double team this guy. We're going to pin him down. He's going to talk or else. We have ways of making you talk. But for the younger people who are watching, when we say War of the Worlds, that was a radio broadcast, national radio show, Halloween night, I think, of 1938, in which some people overheard this fictional story about aliens landing in Grover's Mill, New Jersey, and it touched off supposedly some amount of fear or panic in people listening to the radio, thinking this is a real news story. And so some grabbed their guns in New Jersey and were out combing the countryside for the aliens, and a few people may have had like mild heart attacks or something. But for the most part, I think Orson Welles built that panic up.
Yeah, he was a hype man.
Important. Yeah. There wasn't that much panic, but the government probably based their opinions ever since on that reaction and made the front page of every paper.
Right.
That, the big War of the Worlds broadcast set off a panic. And that's why the government doesn't want to go forward with so much of this, is they're afraid people will go running out in the streets, quit their job, quit their college, quit their grade school, quit listening to their parents. It would just be chaotic and affect the stock market. And, affect your religion. You might even stop showing up for church or believe in worshiping aliens instead of God or what have you.
This had to be running through Eisenhower's mind during this meeting.
Right. That was probably foremost, that we've got to protect our religious institutions and the government and the stock market. Supposedly, the aliens spoke to Eisenhower, please stop your nuclear testing. And they may well have offered a clean energy system that he apparently turned down. You'd just like to go back and strangle the guy because we were pouring filth into the atmosphere back in the 40s and 50s with smokestacks and factories and automobile belching exhaust. And we were really depleting the ozone layer and building up the old greenhouse gases, which we're dealing with today. But Eisenhower, apparently, if that story is true, said, nah, I don't want to disrupt our way of life, our economy, our
it would have disrupted the economy if you get free energy. There goes the whole oil industry.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole energy industry would just collapse, and a lot of our dollar now is dependent on it. Back then, it was just starting to.
Yeah, so
it would have collapsed us.
Reason it would have been pretty radical for people back then in '54 who were somewhat built up mentally, emotionally for aliens because of those movies you mentioned. Including The Day the Earth Stood Still, which was very popular and released in theaters about 3 years before the Eisenhower encounter at Edwards Air Force Base.
Well, if you look at the 1950s UFO kind of movement, and people were not in the military, but UFO researchers back then, or people were like the Space Brothers. there was talk of these human-like aliens that would come, the Venusians, or that would come, and what would they'd have a very, very kind of communistic take on society and stop your nuclear weapons message. And I mean, the FBI was investigating these groups.
Yeah.
J. Edgar Hoover was worried
seriously
about these
they
groups.
took it. Now, why would they investigate, a bunch of so-called kooks or UFO people, George Adamski and other authors at that time? And I put a couple of stories in my book, how they mirrored the Eisenhower encounter in a fictional screenplay that came out later in 54. I don't think that was a coincidence. October of 1954, Valor magazine wrote about the Eisenhower encounter. They talked about it back then. This is not really that new of a story. It made the radio airwaves through Frank Edwards' broadcast, and it would appear in a couple of books fleetingly in the ensuing year or two afterwards. So Edward Ruppelt, you remember that name from Project Blue Book?
Oh, yeah.
And researchers found a letter that he wrote asking, I'm hearing these rumors that Eisenhower went to an airbase and met with aliens. Is this true? And that was from like 55 or later in 54. So these stories were out there. They were circulating because some people did apparently talk.
Right.
And, you couldn't keep it completely secret.
Obviously not. And there's a lot more to this. There's other witnesses. We got to get to I want to definitely come back from commercial break, talk about we might have shot at these UFOs before they landed to talk to. That's really good, interesting story. And it makes you wonder, were there some people in the military brass, they're like, we're not going to talk to them. They're enemies, and we're going to take them out. Like if there was some, infighting going on too, is what I know, speculation, but it makes you wonder. I want to get to that when we come back from commercial break. And we will open up the phone lines too, guys, when we come back. If you call in, you have a question for our guest, Paul Blake Smith. We're talking about his book tonight, President Eisenhower's Close Encounters. Again, if you are into UFO history and lore, this is one of the biggest stories you can ever get into. And there's no other book that covers it as much as this one right here. Definitely check out President Eisenhower's Close Encounters. That's what we're talking about tonight. And like I said, when we come back, phone lines will be open after the short commercial break.
Conducting an experiment into the combined effects of sensory deprivation and hallucinatory drugs. The subject of the experiment is himself, and the experiment is out of control. Ken Russell's Altered States, a film that must not be missed, is in the West End now. Altered States, Certificate X.
Do you wish for more paranormal and spiritual content? The Paranormal Chronicles magazine is a free digital magazine crammed with the very best in paranormal and spiritual articles and features. No sign-up, no subscription, just free reading and knowledge for you. Read today at www.paranormalchronicles.com/magazine.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do voices from beyond the cold case files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Paranation Magazine is a new paranormal magazine based out of Denver, Colorado. Our goal isn't just to give you the best paranormal content out there, but to promote paranormal unity. We're doing this by giving everyone an opportunity to tell their stories and to share their experiences. For more information, follow us on Facebook at Paranation Magazine and soon, paranationmag.com.
I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is the extraordinary travels of a young, alone, and broke psychic in the highly anticipated new book from internationally renowned psychic, medium, medical intuitive, and best-selling author Sherry Dillard. Critics have described I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like as an engrossing memoir, an empowering story of how a broken girl came to accept her psychic gift, a refreshing and fun read. I've Never Met a Dead Person I Didn't Like is available through Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold.
Edgar Allan Poe wrote Spirits of the Dead with a pen dipped in warm blood. You will see the ultimate in terror with this important all-star cast. Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda in Edgar Allan Poe's Spirits of the Dead. Only Poe's demented genius could bring to the screen such horror and evil. Spirits of the Dead stars Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon, Jane Fonda, Terence Stamp, and Peter Fonda. Directed by three masters of the cinema, Federico Fellini, Louis Malle, and Roger Vadim. Spirits of the Dead is an adventure in terror beyond your wildest nightmares. Spirits of the Dead in color is rated R.
You could accept the fact that this city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportion.
What do you mean, biblical?
What he means is Old Testament, Mr. Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff.
Exactly.
Fire and brimstone coming down from the skies. Rivers and seas boiling.
40 years of darkness, earthquakes, volcanoes.
The dead rising from the grave.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
You're listening to Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419 or by Skype caller ID oojblandoo or Jblandparanormalsoup. Soup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest is Paul Blake Smith, author of President Eisenhower's Close Encounters. I highly recommend this book if you are into UFO lore or the history of the UFO phenomenon. This is one of the biggest stories out there, and I honestly have never seen a book cover this at all. I mean, it's mentioned in books, it's mentioned in documentaries, Ancient Aliens, but not as in depth as Paul has gone into this book. And I was truly impressed. I always am. MO41, again, the Cape Girardeau UFO crash in 1941. He does his research, and he writes it well enough to take you along. And like I said, it makes me speculate. He doesn't speculate in his books, but I speculate about all these different things. This is the history of it. What was going on behind these closed-door meetings with aliens? What did Eisenhower agree to? We got a lot more. We're running, man, the show goes by so fast, especially when we have a topic like this. There's so much more I want to get to, so we got a lot to do, but we will open up the phone lines. Let me make sure they're open for you guys. Hold on. I always have to check, make sure I have the do not disturb off. All right. Phone lines are open. Call in. Join the conversation. You have a question for our guest? My question is, what was agreed upon in this meeting? I know Paul doesn't have that answer, but he's done the research to give us maybe an idea of what was actually discussed at that time. I want to get into that. But let's go ahead and get back to our guest. All right, Paul, you still there with me?
I'm right here.
So they have this meeting. I know it's been speculated a lot over the years, the rumor of this, that Eisenhower made a treaty or made an agreement for technology. It sounds like other people say no. Like he said, we don't want your free energy. We don't want, just go away. It sounds like, but some people believe he made a treaty or a deal for like alien abductions. Like, were they even aware of this at that time is my question. What information, I mean, I know there's very little, but what information could you find about what was actually discussed with these aliens besides the fact that...
Yeah, you see this on the internet. You can get all kinds of wild speculation, or I know what the deal was. It was about alien abduction and eating or torturing or implanting things in human abduction. I kind of want to skirt around these speculative parts, but point out that apparently the aliens were here as kind of scientists, and they wanted to see humanity up close, and maybe did take a few of our people in an agreement that they would put them back after they looked them over, and they wanted to see our plant and animal life and our life on Earth. And in exchange for this, they would give us a little technology. We would give them a few samples in return at a private Air Force base in Nevada. This is all according to these 1989 Defense Intelligence Agency documents, which were apparently briefing papers for the incoming new president, George H.W. Bush. And so it spells out pretty good that Eisenhower did meet with the aliens, and they did come to an agreement in a formal kind of treaty. There's a man named Don Phillips who worked for Skunk Works, the aerodynamic industry, creating jet planes and fighter planes and that sort of thing. And he said, he's got a little video, you can go to it online, that he was shown some briefing reports that said Eisenhower met with aliens. The story is true, and that they exchanged some technology, and we got this information to help our aircraft, what he was working on decades later. But it boiled down to this agreement that they got from Eisenhower, and that he really did meet face to face. And of course, it didn't start off too good. If we want to get into that story,
let's get into this.
One of your viewers had a little
Royal
message.
Yeah, Royal had this up here, and he must be familiar with it. I also heard that our military did fire shots at the UFO by mistake, just as they were coming into land for the meeting. It was a major screw up, but no harm was done. Yet you can imagine that some heads must have rolled after that. Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about this.
According to a military man, a sergeant probably in the Air Force, who was stationed at Edwards Air Force Base, he was out on the desert floor in the vast open space, the dry lake bed of Muroc, under the command of a general. They were exercising the troops in how to properly fire artillery at targets out in the open fields. And so at this artillery range, they were firing live ammo. And out of the sky came 5 spaceships, 3 circular, 2 elongated, or cigar-shaped, as we often say. And they floated down out of the sky, apparently pretty silent and smooth in the sunshine. And the general said, "Open fire on those bogeys." It's like, this is not their airspace. This is trespassing in our territory. So the sergeant said, we did what we were ordered to do. We turned our guns on the alien ships as they came down and floated over us, and we fired live ammo, and our explosives had no effect whatsoever on these ships. They just brushed it off and kept going. They floated over the base and landed on a runway near an open hangar, and that eventually, I'm sure the general said cease fire. Obviously, it didn't happen the way he wanted to, scare them off. Why you would not have gotten the memo, a general that high ranking, I don't know. That VIP visitors were going to arrive that day. He was out in the field, and maybe he didn't get the information. And his natural response was, let's shoot them down. Let's kill
Shoot first,
guys.
ask questions later. It's coming right for us.
Well, you're trained in defense of your nation, and I guess he felt threatened somehow, and that he didn't know they were coming. So I'm sure Eisenhower was just thrilled when he got this information. We have visitors from another world. You almost set off an interplanetary war. You fired on them. You tried to kill them, and I'm sure the general got a good dressing down after that incident, but apparently it had no effect on the aliens, who remained friendly and stepped out of their ships and talked to Air Force Base officials and said, we would love to meet your president. The traditional take me to your leader might have actually been uttered at that meeting.
Well, I always wonder, when I read this in your book about this incident too, is like, it's all pre-planned. They're going to do this, and then they decide to put a bunch of guys out there with live rounds in the vicinity of it. It seems a bit suspicious.
Somebody, that's what I didn't want to speculate too much, but one of the general just didn't like the idea at all.
Right.
He just happened to show up at artillery practice. Come on. I think he knew what was coming, and he wanted to be a big shot, maybe be a big hero. He didn't like foreigners of any kind. He felt it was a mistake maybe to communicate with aliens. This is conjecture again, but I find it difficult to believe that a sergeant was just drilling his men in artillery practice, and a general just happened to show up, and that from that point said, unidentified bogeys, fire on those. It might have been his private agenda to do this when he learned that they were coming. I don't know. It was a remarkably stupid and rash thing to do. Obviously, it was not Eisenhower's intent. He didn't want to touch off a war. He wanted to meet friendly visitors who just wanted to speak in English calmly on some issues. So it would have risked everything. It might have. Can you imagine them being offended and firing back or invading our whole country or something just on this one foolish general who said, let's shoot at these guys and see what happens.
What maybe takes me back to is the Battle of Los Angeles. What year was that?
Or February 42.
Yeah, when they shot at something that was supposed to be up in the sky. We have the one infamous picture of that, and they threw everything they had at it.
Right.
didn't
we don't
do
know
anything.
What it is, but let's fire like our guns are going out of style tomorrow. Let's fire everything we got at this thing. And apparently that had no effect, although there are rumors that something was shot down in the mountains of San Bernardino outside of Los Angeles. They did recover a craft. There's some documents that I think George Marshall, then the Army Chief of Staff to FDR, directed this operation. I don't know if that's true. Another story said the 42 Battle of Los Angeles ended up with a craft crash landing into the Pacific, and that was also recovered. But it's awful tenuous, these documents and these claims.
Yeah, it's there's all pieces of data and puzzles we're trying to put together. A mystery, something that's been hidden from us. But the thing is, there's so much out there that something happened. There's something to this story about Eisenhower. I've always felt that this isn't just something that was made up in a UFO magazine many years ago. There's witnesses. There's plenty of people who have talked about it at that time. It's just they've tried to quelch it as much as they can, but it's there. People know it happened, and Eisenhower probably set up the first. Truman would have set up Majestic 12. We haven't even gotten to the Majestic 12 documents, which my opinion, feel are real. I think Lyndall Moulton Howell has done incredible work on that. I think the typeset, in my opinion, the Z.
Yeah,
you mentioned that in your book too.
Is the real clue that those are the real deal, and Stanton Friedman did a lot of work on that too, and he felt pretty convinced those are real. And sometimes when he saw a fake on something, he wouldn't hesitate to speak his mind. Stanton was unafraid of.
He didn't. He thought Bob Lazar was fake. I disagree with him on that.
Example, yeah.
Yeah,
So
I disagree with Stanton Friedman on that, but.
Well, for those who don't know, the government had a printing press and they didn't use the letter Z too often. So a lot of dust collected under that typewriter key. And when it did, it raised the level of the Z on official government documents. And the majestic 12 documents that people have been debating for years has that raised Z. Now, how would you know to put that in if you were hoaxing something? And
right,
so that's
exactly.
something that kind of stands in its favor. It would have been a natural reaction by Truman to the 47 Roswell and the 48 crash at Aztec and the 41 crash at Cape Girardeau to form a committee and start looking into what is it that we've got, what can we expect, how can we capitalize on this or possibly weaponize what we're finding. And so I believe that committee was still in effect when Eisenhower was president, and who knows, it might still be around to this day.
Different name maybe, but
Right.
yeah. With Eisenhower and the technology at this meeting, you got to imagine we got somebody waiting on the phone line. We'll get to you in just a second. I want to get to this. So, maybe passed up free energy, but there's no way he was going to pass up free military technology, because if they're talking to them, they could be talking to Russia. They could be talking to China. They could be talking to all of our enemies out there and giving them the technology. If we don't take it, they will. So I think if anything was offered, he did take a deal of some kind. Now, it's hard for me to imagine him taking a deal that would have said, we're going to take a number of citizens and abduct them, experiment on them. I don't know if that was discussed or not, but I'm sure he would have made a deal of some kind to get some kind of technology, because that, you have to, if your enemies out there could get it.
According to this Don Phillips, who saw the government documents describing the Eisenhower encounter, he said, I remember this quote, Eisenhower told the aliens, how can we stop you? You're so advanced. So he may have agreed that you can come and look us over from a distance, maybe in remote settings, but I don't think Eisenhower would ever agree to allow humans to be, dissected or molested or probed in the hindquarters.
And literally not agree with it while cameras are filming him.
Yeah, really.
If they were filming it, he had maybe an idea that he might come out with it. There's some reason they're recording it. Maybe if things went to hell,
right?
And the aliens
That's
did start
another,
attacking, Eisenhower did meet him.
Yeah. Well, why film it in case the whole thing did blow up and they were like a Trojan horse? They were evil. They had an ulterior motive. And plus, if he really wanted to, he could take that footage of the encounter and say, look who aliens chose to land with. You'll want to reelect me in 1956. Well, he won by a landslide anyway. Never used it. But he could have used that as a powerful force to get other nations of the world to cooperate with America and our technology and our way of life, our goods and services. Because, look, these aliens landed here. Here's the footage. Here's the proof. I don't know if he ever leaked anything like that. But it's another impetus or excuse to have had those movie cameras there recording the scene.
I mean, if you want to keep it secret, don't have movie cameras there, because that could get
right.
out. But obviously they felt it was worth it for some reason. And my only thought of that is that, maybe we might need this footage. We might have to talk about this at some point because we'll lose control of it. They had to be in their mindset.
And everything about it, but Eisenhower saw what the aliens could do and said, our world is not ready for this. And supposedly he saw two things. First, they put on an aerial show. They put on a demonstration of, look what our ships can do, so much more advanced than yours, Mr. President. And they took off up over the runway and zipped around at high speed, stopped on a dime probably, came down rotating and spinning and silent. And he was, apparently the president was suitably impressed, according to this eyewitness, but then he really got uncomfortable, maybe red in the face, when they put on their second show, and that was when the aliens, supposedly, cloaked themselves, became invisible to the naked eye. The eyewitness who spoke up in the early 1980s said, we knew they were there, the aliens, but we couldn't see them. And this really rattled the president and said, we can't have you teaching this in an education program to the people of Earth. He knew that there were spies, murderers, rapists, thieves, people who would take this knowledge, this ability, and use it for nefarious purposes. And so that was another reason for him to send them on their way, like, go, 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 don't come back here. At
Like I
least,
said, get off my lawn.
Yeah. But he did possibly meet with them again in February of 55, as evidence produced by the late great researcher Art Campbell. And his data you can look up online at Holloman Air Force Base, February of 1955, where Air Force One, or the Columbine, President Eisenhower's plane landed on a runway, and he apparently got out and spoke to aliens who landed in a silver disc and silently, while one hovered up in the sky overhead. That would have been about a year later. I don't know why they would meet, but it makes sense that if they did form a treaty, they had to work out the exact wording and get maybe some signatures on it from our end and their end, and exchange more thoughts about what they wanted to agree to. So
Or maybe it was a talking down, because one of the things they had been warning about is stop your nuclear testing.
Yeah.
Stop it now.
And
they didn't.
reason with Eisenhower.
Castle happened a couple weeks after it.
Yeah, apparently Eisenhower told them, I'm not going to disarm unilaterally, and I'm not going to stop testing unilaterally.
Right.
I have to see other nations of the world do the same. So it makes you wonder if China, Russia, England, maybe France, if they were approached, their leadership. And that gets into a whole story of maybe you've heard about Prince Philip and his interest in UFOs.
Yes, when he we covered that on the show when he passed away.
Who was that member of Parliament, or member of the royal family who was assassinated? And he was a great friend to Prince Charles. Oh, I can't think of his name right now. He apparently had a country estate, and a witness said, I saw this silver spaceship landed on his lawn. And they investigated and found out that this gardener who said this, boy, I can't remember this.
I know. It sounds familiar. I've heard of this before.
That might be an example. It was from 1955, I think, that aliens did meet with some other power brokers in the world to try to get them to stop nuclear proliferation and testing.
And they could have been meeting with regular people like Adamski and others, getting the message out there. And this, they had to concern our government too. I want to get to this phone call. They've been online here waiting. Who do we got? I can't see the area code, but you're on the air.
Hi, Jason.
Hey.
How are you tonight? It's Azariana.
Hey, Azariana. Thanks for calling in.
Hi, Paul Blake Smith. Nice to meet you.
Hello there.
I have I have a three-part question. First is there really a secret president's book that when they get elected, they get to look at it? And my second question is, if Eisenhower told the truth about, say, aliens and how long they've been visiting and treaties and things like that, what would our world look like today if he had done that and said, screw it, and I'm not keeping anything secret? And third, if all the missing people that were abducted by aliens were returned, what aspect could that be on them and their family and survivors?
Ziriana, let's go back to the first question, because you got a lot there. So say the first question again.
Okay. Is there a secret president book
Okay,
that
let's address that first.
they get to look at?
Jason and I were discussing this a little bit before the show, how we both agree that presidents are probably told a little bit, probably more in the days of Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, in a sliding scale downhill to what they're told today. There might be a kind of briefing book that presidents read. It probably has less information than the old days. That's more speculation, I'm afraid. But Jason, do you think there's literally a almost like presidential book of secrets that?
I don't think there's an actual. I don't think there's an actual book, but I think there are, like the DIA that Heather Wade got, briefing documents that they get, and maybe not to every president. George H.W. Bush was director of Central Intelligence. There's a famous story of Carter, who had promised during his campaign to release, because he had seen a UFO, that he was going to get all that information out there, and then he went to a meeting with director of the Central Intelligence at that time, George Bush, and George Bush said, "You don't need to know."
Yeah.
And whatever else he found out in that meeting, he was completely quiet about it. And years since, and he's asked about it, he kind of says, "Oh, it could be something else." Like he totally limp-wristed, wimped it out on it. I'm sorry, that's the truth. You love or hate Jimmy Carter.
Wouldn't be prudent.
Wouldn't be prudent. Shut up, Carter. You don't need to know, Carter. Not to be prudent. But that's what I think. Some presidents are given the information because they already had it, and they're given a more briefing on it. Like Bush would have been involved, being in the intelligence agency. Nixon would have been being part of the Eisenhower administration, and we're going to get the Jack Lee Gleason thing. But all right, so is there on your second question? Go ahead.
Okay, if Eisenhower had told the truth about aliens, technology, and everything else, how would our world what would our world be like today? How would it change?
Well, that's a good question. And again, this leads to speculation. I'm not quite sure. There was a letter written by a man named Gerald Light, who was a visitor to Edwards Air Force Base, apparently in early April of '54, who said, "I just found out Eisenhower was here a few months before and saw the alien craft and saw the aliens and spoke with him. And apparently an official delivery is being prepared for the American people, a speech that would be given in the month of May." And there were various reasons why, but that was the exact time of the ending of the nuclear test program, the Castle program. So apparently it was being bandied about for Eisenhower to go forward and go past the various authorities who told him, "You can't talk about this." And he pondered it seriously and decided ultimately, obviously, not to talk. If he had, boy, I don't know what we could speculate, that maybe this would just have rocked the world and caused people to flood. If they found out Edwards Air Force Base in particular was a landing site, they might have gone out there like, you remember, let's storm Area 51.
Yeah.
They might have gone out there after Edwards Air Force Base. Man, we want to see the aliens. And that would have just ruined everything. So there could have been some negative repercussions. People, again, quitting their jobs, quitting their school, quitting their belief system.
Or starting an aliens arms race. Because now that we admitted it, the other countries are aware of it, and now they're going to seek out the aliens and try to seek out the technology if they don't have it.
And here's where we get into another sticky issue. There's apparently more than one race of aliens coming to this planet. You make a deal with one, what about all the others? And do they, well, the door's open. Come on in, and we can take people and abduct them and inspect them. If the human-like aliens who met with Eisenhower were really good guys and didn't do the abducting, what's to stop other races like these Greys or Reptilians or Nordics or what have you? Because, the Pandora's box is open, and they feel like, well, if they can make an agreement with Eisenhower and do certain things, then we can just do whatever we want.
Or make an agreement with China or Russia.
Exactly.
We don't know what the alien factions, if there's other alien factions here, which I believe there are at war with each other or have some of their own treaties, but they could have also told Eisenhower, listen, there are other aliens here that are a threat to you. We will protect you. We will protect you for a little cooperation. And that could have been part of the deal too.
It starts to get more and more complicated when you ponder the possibilities, and Eisenhower just did the best he can that he could under the circumstances, but it makes you wonder, did he meet any others or get communication from others, other races, other beings? What's to prevent them from coming here? You read those 89 documents, 1989, and it talks about Earth as kind of like a nature habitat that's being protected by other races to keep the more nefarious ones from landing here and exploiting us directly. So,
exactly.
Gosh, who knows that we might have a lot of visitors here, and we're being kind of kept at bay or protected by kindly races. It
have like a
boggles
prime
the mind,
directive,
doesn't it?
like Star Trek is what I wonder if they have like a prime directive. Of course, they'd be breaking it by giving us technology. It wouldn't be the actual
Yeah, but Kirk
Federation.
and Spock broke that directive.
Oh, they broke it all the time.
Yeah, they got involved with every race. They broke the prime directive, or they wouldn't have a show.
Right. Picard was the one that's going, oh, the prime directive. And Kirk's like, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, right. Well, let's go ahead and land and walk around and talk to them and have adventures. He would have been called onto the carpet long ago if that had been a real situation, because almost every show they get involved.
They were breaking the prime directive.
They don't just observe and remain aloof. They get involved with these alien creatures. So what were the orders of the ones who really did come here, the Eisenhower era or today? Obviously, it's to remain remote. Eisenhower asked them to kind of stay at a distance, don't cause a panic over our major cities, don't do any landing in front of a lot of people like the White House lawn. He apparently asked them to show some respect for our society and don't disrupt our civilization. And I think that agreement has been adhered to by other succeeding presidents, possibly to this day.
Anything? You had one other thing, Azuriana? We'll make it quick. I got somebody else waiting on the phone.
Yes. If all the missing people who were abducted by aliens, what if they were returned? What would change for their family today? Do you think it would have consequences?
You're talking about people who have been abducted but never returned, kind of like in Close Encounters of the Third Kind when they bring back the pilots that went missing.
Yeah, or Amelia Earhart, supposedly.
I don't think she was taken by.
Yeah, I don't either, but it's an interesting question. But once again, speculative. We could make up all kinds of possible scenarios of what would happen if they were returned by aliens and they brought back lots of interesting information or maybe horror stories of what was done to them. I don't know what effect that would have on society. Would we believe these people? The fact that, let's say, they were abducted or taken or went voluntarily 50 years ago and came back maybe even looking the same. Most of their family is dead and gone now.
I always wanted that to be the sequel to Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, there you go. Let's
Richard Dreyfuss comes back.
Yeah. I'm back, but everyone else is dead from my era 70, 80 years ago.
Well, Azuriana, thank you for calling in.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, we got another caller I want to get to. We got Zach on the line. How you doing tonight, Zach?
I'm doing pretty good, brother. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was quarantined, but it was good. We ate it. We got my wife picked up food from my in-laws, and we ate here. It was the first Thanksgiving I got to enjoy because I didn't have to work on Black Friday after 20 plus years of working every Black Friday. It was the first one I ever missed, so I got to actually enjoy it.
Well, I've been working Black Friday for about almost 10 years now, so I hear you. So I have two questions tonight. Hey, Paul. Very nice to meet you, sir. My first question goes back really to the Eisenhower Treaty. Based on the research that you've gathered, was there any kind of agreement for these beings to maybe set up bases or depots maybe on our planet? And I say this just because I live out in Arizona, and there's one location in particular that I've noticed that tends to get a lot of UFO sightings, and that's out in Tonopah, which is about 50 miles west of Phoenix. It's right out in the middle of the desert. And when you go out there, there's a lot of places you can be able to hide. Like, nobody's going to go out there. So I just wanted to know, really, was there some kind of arrangement for them to allow to set up some kind of like a base, maybe here on Earth, multiple bases to where these beings can be able to land?
There's an enormous amount of government land in Nevada, Wyoming, Utah, probably Arizona, where you're not allowed to go. And according to those 1989 briefing documents, there was a base utilized in Nevada, way out in the desert, away from civilization. I forget the name of it, something like Paintbrush, or it was an air base that possibly the CIA and the Air Force were working together, where apparently aliens were allowed to land and bring technology, and we would bring them technology or biological specimens or samples in an exchange of tit for tat. You bring this and we'll bring that, and that this may still go on to this day. Linda Moulton Howe has interviewed a man who was a retired serviceman who said that he was part of this process. He went out to the Nevada base. I believe sometimes it's called S4, Sector 4, near
Bob Lazar
Area
talked
51. Yeah, and that there was an alien there. He wasn't allowed to speak to it, this man said, when he was in the service. But he told Linda Moulton Howe the story is real during the Eisenhower era and forward, that aliens were landing at this air base under controlled circumstances and interacting with our top intelligence and Air Force officials. So there's that.
Even Bob Lazar had a incident where he felt he might have witnessed part of what might have been an alien in another room. He couldn't see that they had there at S4.
He also said he was allowed to read briefing documents of his
Yes.
own with interesting details of where we got these spaceships that he was allowed to work on. So,
and even religious implications
who
in
told
those
him
briefing
that?
documents. Right.
Yeah. Where was that source? Who told him that? But he wasn't able to read too much, according to his story, which, again, he has never wavered from, added to, embellished, gone crazy with all kinds of wild claims. He said, I'm going to tell us and not distort it, and that's that. And he is stuck with it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And then my second question goes back to like a lot of contactees, because I felt like after this incident, because I heard about the Eisenhower story, is that you see a huge surge of abductions and contactee stories and all that stuff. So with this being done, did the U.S. government get any kind of indication, or really any government that had any meetings with these beings, did they give any kind of indication that if the case there was a story that would have really been detrimental really to their narrative, did they make it clear that they would enforce really censorship of these stories?
That 1989 document, or it was from 89 and leaked in 2017 to radio host Heather Wade, makes it clear that the military would take care of those who wrote about UFOs back in the day, that they would, they didn't want aliens talking to authors and investigative journalists and TV people. As kind of odd as that seems, that was apparently an important a stipulation and an agreement with them that aliens please don't land and speak in English and tell everything to reporters. And they wanted this in print as part of that contractual agreement that Eisenhower got. So it's difficult to say if they ever even made an attempt, but maybe our hosts know more about this on this show than I do.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think they, I mean, reading the report that Heather had, it does sound like they would silence people or whatever, but I don't think the aliens stuck to their agreement as much as we didn't stick to our agreement with them either. It's just how things go. I honestly think some of those people made up a lot of stuff in the 50s on UFOs, and there was like a kind of a cult-like movement with these like space brother groups. But I think some of that is so similar to Eisenhower's meeting, the description of the aliens and the message they were giving, especially when it comes to, no nuclear weapons, that they were visiting people. They were doing this, and that's why, like, the FBI was watching them, and probably the CIA and others.
Yeah, I wish we had more facts, more leaked documents. If you're a hacker out there and you've got nothing better to do, how about hacking into some government UFO files? And
Yeah, don't encourage anybody to do anything criminal.
Yeah, well, do what you have to do and maybe bribe someone. Jason has a lot of money. Maybe he can bribe someone.
I do not.
Handing over secret documents there.
But if I had a lot of money.
About hacking, I don't know how to do it. I can barely put wires together to get a laptop to work. So
was it Gary McKenna who hacked the NASA?
Yeah, I remember that.
And said that we have a secret space fleet. Again, there's so much, there's so many different stories. All these scenes are hints to something that's real, and it's just piecing it together. And if we ever get the real story, I don't know. But Zach, thanks for calling in tonight, bud.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul, so much for answering my questions, man. I greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Have a great night, Zach.
Have a great night, y'all.
Now, we were talking about earlier about how, after Eisenhower left office, you have Kennedy, how this information was passed on to other presidents. And we were both talking before the show. I feel it's less and less for each president, and now it's barely anything told to them. Maybe a slight briefing on it. Yes, we're aware. And they might be getting the same bullcrap we're getting from this UFO disclosure at this point.
The JFK story is a good one, isn't it? That, of all the places he could have gone, he made a beeline for Eisenhower's Palm Springs home.
More than once.
Met with him in private, shooed away reporters. You're not allowed in. They met for over an hour and talked in private. What was it that JFK just had to talk to Eisenhower, and it couldn't be done over the phone or through intermediaries or through letters? He had to fly 2,700 miles out to meet with the ex-president. And there were some gaps in JFK's schedule then, and rumors that he too saw something otherworldly at an airbase during this visit, or possibly two others he made to Palm Springs with Eisenhower in town in his brief presidency. One of the tales claims that JFK may have seen bodies and debris from Roswell. Another one that he may have met an extraterrestrial. That was a wild story. You'll read it in the book. It's an important chapter because other presidents did fly out and meet with Eisenhower, including LBJ. Almost within weeks of becoming president, he announced to the press, "I'm going to fly out and meet with Eisenhower in Palm Springs."
Why?
You can't be anywhere else. So again, I checked his digitized schedule, and there were some gaps there where he could have gone out to an air base. There were rumors that in 1964, the exact 10th anniversary, LBJ did fly out and meet with Eisenhower on the 10th anniversary, almost to the day of the Eisenhower encounter from 1954. It just can't be a coincidence. When I was typing in on my laptop Eisenhower alien agreement or treaty, and the return came at one point and said 10-year agreement. And I thought, where did that come from? And I couldn't find further information. It was very frustrating. But I thought, 10-year agreement, well, that expired on the exact day LBJ dropped everything to fly out to visit with Eisenhower in private. And so, that can't be just, I just happen to be in the neighborhood, and why don't we have a little chat that's most innocent? Something was up there. Probably a question of, should we renew this agreement for another 5 years? And what happens? 5 years later, LBJ flew out to Palm Springs, played golf with Eisenhower, and they met in private and on the exact anniversary day, February 19th and 20th. And here we go, setting up what you would like to discuss and what I put into a new sequel, a whole book, President Nixon and what he experienced on February 19th, 1973.
Yeah, let's go into that because we've talked about this show on the show plenty of times. I've always found the Nixon Jackie Gleason story so fascinating, and to me very credible. I mean, it comes from Jackie Gleason's ex-wife.
Yeah.
But they were alive when she came out with the story in a memoir, and neither did Nixon defeat it or Jackie Gleason. They could have came out. They could have sued her for libel.
They asked Jackie Gleason repeatedly, "What's this story that your wife telling? Is this true?" And for those who are not familiar, I'll explain that Jackie's wife, his second wife, named Beverly McKittrick, she gave an interview to, I believe, the National Enquirer, and they sat down and crafted this story that said Jackie came home one night while he was hosting a golf tournament, just pale, ashen-faced, trembling, and he began smoking and drinking. He was most upset. And I asked, "Jackie, what's wrong?" And he says, "I've been out to an Air Force base with President Nixon, and I saw the proof. I saw dead alien bodies. Nixon showed them to me at last." And so he apparently didn't tell Beverly much more than that, and she said it was the most astounding thing. if he was putting on a performance or an act, it was an Academy Award performance, because he really was shaken up. And for days, she said, he wouldn't eat, he wouldn't sleep. He was just really upset because the government has the proof and they won't tell people, and they belittle you. They mock you when you try to come forward with your UFO stories. It really upset Jackie Gleason. So Beverly wrote this story, and reporters ever after asked Jackie, what about this? And instead of saying that's nonsense, or don't even bring that up in my presence because it's not true, he just refused to comment. And I think that's pretty telling, right?
That says it all to me. He could have said, "Oh, she's crazy," or, you know. I mean, they could literally have sued her for, making this up if they thought it was made up. But he didn't. He never spoke about it. In my
book, I found out Jackie had a lot of ties to government people, law enforcement. He was a master Mason. They were expected to keep secrets. I'm sure he was embarrassed that he blurted out the truth to his wife in the first place.
He was in shock.
But to his credit, he didn't say, "Oh, it's all a big lie." He just wouldn't talk about it. So it's a credible story, I feel, and it fits the exact date. I went back and checked Nixon's records, February 19th. He went to Jackie Gleason's golf tournament, and then later that night, he went off to an Air Force base, just like Eisenhower, probably snuck out in the cover of darkness, just like Eisenhower, met Jackie Gleason at Homestead Air Force Base. They saw some alien material. Supposedly one source, and I wish I had more information on this, said that Jackie saw a spaceship that was being housed in a hangar, and that it was floating. It had to be tethered down with like cables or something. And I don't believe Beverly said that in her article.
She said he saw a body.
Right. He saw 3 bodies or 4 bodies or something like that. Yeah. That they were small, dead, a little mangled with big ears. And it's interesting to note that the description kind of matches the Hopkinsville, Kentucky alien.
Yeah, I always found that interesting. It could, could have been a lot of other descriptions given, but it does match the Hopkinsville goblins, or whatever you want to call them, that incident. So one of the things we were talking about before the show is why they don't tell presidents much anymore. And I always blame Nixon. Because he took Hollywood. Right.
Yeah, Jackie's wife should have kept her mouth shut. But Jackie should have kept his mouth shut. And his reaction, he didn't work for like a year in movies, and like for 8 months in television. He was so shook up, and it gave credence to why we can't tell the public. Look at the reaction Jackie Gleason had.
Right.
He was
maybe it was a test. Maybe it was a test. Hey, Nixon, let's see what happens when we take some high profile guy and we show him, see how he reacts.
And this reinforced their policy of we can't tell people this. Look what Jackie did.
We can't tell presidents because presidents are going to take their best friend on a golfing trip and go show them the dead alien bodies. That's what I always blame Nixon for them keeping it, telling presidents less and less. Also, back to JFK, there's the whole Marilyn Monroe thing. I mean, this is how not enough time on the show to cover all this, but this is why you got to get this book here. But with Marilyn Monroe, I mean, the rumors are that Marilyn Monroe, through Robert Kennedy or JFK, was told about this meeting and UFOs and aliens and was going to come out about it. And
Robert Slater was a friend of Marilyn. He had the photos to prove it of himself with Marilyn, or he took photos of Marilyn, exclusive photos. He was a good man. He said that during the summer of '62, Marilyn took him to a beach. They went to a beach like in Malibu and talked in private. And Robert Slater said, Marilyn said, RFK admitted to me that JFK went to an airbase out west to look at evidence for extraterrestrials, bodies and debris, and that the bodies had big heads, big black eyes. They were your typical grays. Yeah. This is according to Robert Slater. He gave an interview in the 1990s and said, this is what happened to me. Marilyn told me of what RFK told her, of what JFK told RFK. So that's kind of roundabout, and I wish we had more documentation. There is that memo that's very famous about Marilyn's phone being tapped, and the CIA was keeping tabs on that. And it mentions Marilyn talked about extraterrestrial evidence that JFK looked at. So we can conclude some things there. JFK, I'll admit, did not visit Eisenhower on that February 19th date. He was 1 month late for some reason in March of 62. And 2 other dates he went to Palm Springs were not February 19th. But it makes me wonder if Nixon was at that Air Force base for other alien-related things like renewing that treaty on February 19th, and he just decided to invite Jackie. And how much was Jackie shown? And how much did Jackie reveal to his wife? Were there things he wasn't going to tell her, just that he saw dead bodies? It could have been more. So what really went on to shake Jackie up so bad?
It was disturbing to him.
Yeah, it's on February the 19th, the anniversary date. Did a treaty need to be updated? I looked up in more documents, presidential diary listings, appointments. Nixon went back to Homestead Air Force Base and was around there February 19th of 74, and the documents are cut out. They excised the records. Very, very suspicious of what Nixon was up to the following year. And if Jackie was called in, you can't find it. They removed pages from his files. So
I've heard the story
times,
that. Well, I heard the story that he picked him up in a car too. Like he had no Secret Service, and he just said, "Get in."
I'm a little skeptical on that one.
I know.
But it's possible. Nixon would fly everywhere in Florida by his chopper. He took it from Homestead to his Key Biscayne household, which had a chopper base right nearby. He would get on the helicopter. So he probably flew to Homestead. A driver apparently showed up. According to the Beverly Gleason article, Jackie just said, I was escorted to and through the base and where there were armed military people. He didn't say in Beverly Gleason's account. Nixon showed up. That was a UFO researcher who claimed this was revealed by Jackie, who wasn't talking about the story.
Yeah. Jackie Gleason, I mean, he was obsessed with UFOs. They say he was badgering Nixon to tell him something, and this is what brought it on. But, I mean, he had a house he built that was shaped like a UFO. Yeah. And I was a fan of Steven Spielberg. Again, amazing stories. Did you ever watch that show? It was in the 80s. One of those had Jackie Gleason. And what was that episode? These 2 kids have a antenna that they set up because they're trying to get channels or radio or something, or trying to get TV or something like that, like TV channels, and they end up getting these aliens broadcasting to them. And Jackie Gleason makes a cameo in that episode.
I gotta see that. That's awesome.
Yeah, amazing stories.
Thank you for sharing that with me.
Yep.
I do know Jackie, according to Beverly Gleason, was crazy about ham radios and kept a whole bedroom full of them on his golf course home in South Florida. And so it makes sense that he would go up there, and I think he was trying to make contact himself, with his ham radio.
That's what this whole episode's about.
Yeah, so this fits perfectly. I got to look this up.
I'll find it.
It's not yet put into print.
I'll find it for you. You got to get that in there.
Credits there.
I will look this episode up because it's important to get into because I've always thought about this, about the Jackie Gleason story. He was getting in his elder years when he did this cameo.
Yeah. Please do send that to me. I would like to see that very much.
Yeah, I will find it. I'm trying to remember what service still has amazing stories on. I will look that episode up if I can find it. Maybe YouTube has it or a clip of it.
And it's cool that there's a Spielberg connection to this.
And Spielberg.
Once again, he knows a lot.
I know. And that's what I say. There's people in Hollywood. There's people in our government. They have little tidbits or some information. I think they put it out there in the public in a sense to maybe discredit it. But like, oh, that was just Jackie. That was just Hollywood. You're just, making it up. They already did that on this show or they did this in this movie. Sometimes I think it's partly that. But it's also, I think, to influence us and how we think about aliens. I think Spielberg would have to be a big part in that. And Gleason and the Nixon meeting, and JFK and Marilyn Monroe, these are all reasons why you wouldn't want to tell a president because they're people and they're human and they're only in office for 4 or 8 years. And who are they going to tell? Who are they going to tell their mistress? Are they going to tell their wife? You don't tell these people. We're going to come up on a commercial break. But so you got JFK, who might have been assassinated because of what he wanted to do. Which is some people speculated that he wanted to share this UFO information with the Russians in a joint secret, basically, let's cooperate where there's a worldwide threat, let's work with the Russians, which would have, totally been against the military thinking at that time. I'm trying to think the general at that time. one of the people who hated JFK.
Curtis LeMay?
Curtis LeMay, thank you. Hated JFK.
Yeah.
And would have definitely been against sharing this information with Russia. He felt betrayed by Robert and JFK during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Speaking of, I mean, here, with JFK, and if he did meet the aliens, they were trying to warn us again about the nuclear arms race, and then we almost go to war and almost start in World War III with the Cuban Missile Crisis. Well, what did JFK do? He sent Robert Kennedy through a back channel to take our missiles out of Turkey to get the Russians to take their missiles out of Cuba, which Curtis LeMay was furious about. Furious. And some people overheard him saying we have to get rid of the Kennedys.
Wow. I know that JFK secretly bugged the cabinet room and left the room, and he got on tape LeMay calling the Kennedys cockroaches or something and really trashing them. And so he knew that LeMay was not in his corner. I think he tried to have him transferred somewhere.
Yes.
There's a famous quote from Jackie Kennedy says, "My God, I wouldn't let Curtis LeMay get his fat paws on a pop gun, let alone our nuclear arsenal."
Well, he wanted to push us into World War III because we had to get the Russians before they got us.
I think he was the role model for Dr. Strangelove, the general in that movie. Yeah. But let's follow him now while we have the chance. Yeah.
And I exactly think at that time period, I was definitely covering the mindset of our military then, with Curtis LeMay being, major influence. And, and I feel JFK, with good chances are, he was taken out of the picture because of what he did during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and two, what he wanted to share with the Russians. They felt they were traitors. I mean, look at how you've covered the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
Look at Howard Hunt. Look at his pretty much deathbed confessions, in a sense. I mean, he was towards the end of his life. He confessed to his son, "Yeah, we did it," and he was proud of it because he felt JFK was a traitor.
He did, although some would say, well, he was on medication, he was very sick, or he was goaded into it. I think he told the truth towards the end.
Me too.
He had nothing to hide anymore.
Yep.
And he
just
said,
go look up Howard Hunt.
Yeah, LBJ knew about it and encouraged, get this thing done. And that kind of sounds like what I've read about him, that he wasn't going to get involved in direct planning because it would have been traced back to him. But he would have said, get going, get this done before I'm kicked off the ticket. So they did. They got him in Dallas. In my research, Oswald had gone to Washington, D.C. and was seen by an eyewitness, a chauffeur for the Secret Service, I think, who said, "I saw Oswald step out of the Willard Hotel, which is just a few blocks from the White House, and it was right there on the map of an open car motorcade 2 or 3 days later, where Oswald was seen." And of course, he could have been perched up in a window firing, but they found out there was too many people and TV cameras. They couldn't have gotten away with it in Washington, D.C.
They tried once.
Original plan summer to train to shoot JFK in Washington, D.C. in this well-planned and publicized open car motorcade with Haile Selassie, the visiting leader of Ethiopia. So I hope you folks can get a copy of my book, JFK and the Willard Hotel Plot, from Argus Books. There's a shameless plug.
I need to get that one. I know. I actually want that book, though, because I've always been fascinated with JFK assassination. All right, man, we've run out of time. Dang it. We got to go to commercial break. We'll be back. There's so much more to talk in, but you can call in the show. I will take your questions. We are running out of time. There's so much I haven't even got to in this interview, because honestly, you guys, if you are a fan like I am or superly, deeply interested in the UFO phenomenon, in the history, I love the history of the UFO phenomenon, get this book, President Eisenhower, Close Encounters. There's no book like it out there. Honestly, I have a lot of books in the history of UFOs and different incidences. There's nothing like this. So definitely check it out. We'll be right back after a short commercial break.
Intercepted the transmission of unknown origin.
Transmission? Out here?
SOS.
Human.
Unknown.
Alien. Certificate X. Exclusive engagement at the Odeon Leicester Square. Now.
Any systematized transmission indicating a possible intelligent origin must be investigated. I will hear it.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
If you are interested in discovering the truth about the paranormal
and want to hear from leading researchers in the field. Join Justin Brown on his 3 weekly shows named My Paranormal Soapbox, Necromancer Live Show, and the Supernatural Symposium live on Facebook, YouTube, and InterfaceDeath.net.
This is an APAC studio presentation.
Hi, I'm Barry, owner-operator of Barry's Barometer Barn. Lately, I bet you've been lying awake at night asking yourself, how many barometers do I really need? Well, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we think you need more than one. Otherwise, we're gonna go out of business. Remember, at Barry's Barometer Barn, we don't know the meaning of high-pressure sales. Come on, folks, buy another barometer. I'm trying to put my kids through college, I've got a family to support, and a secret mistress who isn't cheap.
Visit Barry's Barometer Barn, 000 Storm Drive. Come on, folks, buy a barometer. I'm Barry's older brother, Larry, and every time one of you people walk past the store without coming in, Barry beats me.
This has been a presentation from Tim Morgan's APAC Studio. For more almost professional amateur comic studio content, visit the APAC YouTube channel. Search APAC 2002. That's APAC 2002 on YouTube.
When Alex Gardner is asleep, he has an extraordinary gift. The government wants it, the scientists want it. But to keep it may cost him his life. It might be better if Alex didn't sleep at all. But he cannot resist entering the dreamscape. Can you? See Dreamscape in the West End and all over London now. Certificate 15. It takes an extraordinary adventurer to enter the dreamscape.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from Talkstream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Join us every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time for Weird Wednesday, the live stream, with your hosts Jamie, the Living Dead Girl, and Rob, the Phantom, where we'll talk about all things paranormal, including zodiac, astrology, tarot card and oracle card readings, live ghost boxing and spirit communication, where we'll do Voices from Beyond, the Cold Case Files. So we hope you join us live on Facebook and YouTube every Wednesday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. We hope to see you there. Bye-bye.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Heat 'em up.
Do, re,
Egon.
You're listening to Paranormal Soup, bringing you the weird every Sunday night. Call into the show and join the discussion. The call-in lines are 219-230-4444 or 260-225-9419, or by Skype caller ID oojblandoo or Jblandparanormalsoup. And now to your host, Jason Bland.
Tonight's guest has been Paul Blake Smith. We're talking about his book, President Eisenhower's Close Encounters. And I can't highly recommend this book anymore. If you have any interest in the UFO history or phenomenon, you got to read this book. There's no book that covers it like this does. Like I said, I've read it in passages. I've seen it in documentaries. I've seen it on Ancient Aliens. It's all briefly mentioned about this meeting. But Paul really gets into the facts of what you can find, the archives, the other people, witnesses to the event. You're not going to find any other more information you can than this book. So you got to check it out. Phone lines are open. Call in with your questions tonight. We don't have a lot of time left. There's so much I know I haven't gotten to, and I know we won't get to. That's why I love having Paul on. I know we always run out of time, so let's go ahead and get back to the show. Okay, let's see, make sure, okay. So we're talking, Paul, about, everything leading up, like with the different, after Eisenhower's administration, you got JFK, then Lyndon Johnson, going back on the anniversary, then Nixon taking Jackie Gleason to see dead alien bodies. Nowadays, if you look, people have talked about Bill Clinton tried to look into aliens, and you have Bill Clinton and Obama and George W. Bush on Jimmy Kimmel or one of these talk late nights making flip comments about it. Honestly, I think nowadays, George W. Bush, even though his father was involved in it, knows very little. He might know some because of his family. I believe this is passed down in families, but people like the Clinton administration, I'm not trying to get political here, but would you trust Bill Clinton with that information? He has, like JFK, he has a flawed person who has a mistress or mistresses. He could be reliving the whole Marilyn Monroe situation again. He wanted to find information, obviously. He sent somebody to find information. I forgot the gentleman's name. That he had look into it while he was in the administration. But all of that points to me, and look at Hillary during the 2016 campaign, saying that she's going to look into it. And then with people like Podesta that have been involved with the Clintons that have helped push this kind of disclosure movement, that they know about it, that information is power. Information can get you somewhere, but they don't have it. Okay? They know it exists, they know it's there, but they don't know the information either. And what best way to get it out there? By pushing the public to ask, to get the information out there. I think some administrations, like the Clinton administration, did push for this, not for the public, but for their own private interest to get the information, because information is power. And I think these things are going on behind the scenes.
Sounds reasonable to me. The most discouraging one was Jimmy Carter, who actually saw a UFO in January of '69. And in a few years later, he filled out a full report on it. And then while he was campaigning for president in '76, he said, if I am elected, I'll release all information on UFOs. I know they exist because I've seen one. He was very candid and open about it. As soon as he got to be president, zip. He said, well, I looked into it and NASA won't cooperate. That was kind of the lame excuse. And when he's been asked about it in the time since his presidency, he says, well, I don't know quite what it is I saw. He's just backtracking on everything.
He looks sad. He honestly looks sad when he's talked about it many years later.
He knows sad. And he can't talk. And he wants to tell you, but I'd hate to think there's a dark side to this that they're keeping from us, but it might explain why we can't get a straight answer out of anyone. Obama, Bush, and Clinton go on Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, these talk shows, Jimmy Fallon, and they give a flip answer, and they, well, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you, or it's a matter of national security.
I hate those interviews. That piss me off so much. I yelled at the TV once.
Yeah, but they won't give you, and what does that tell you? They don't say, oh, it's a lot of nonsense. It's that we're not being visited, but he can't tell you the whole truth, whoever that president is. So I think it tells you a lot that we are being visited, and Can't tell you about it because the powers that be.
Trump was all over the place with it.
Yeah.
Honestly, he was all over the place with it. Like, I don't think very much on it. I don't think there's much to it.
Yeah.
And then he gets an interview with his son. He's like, "Oh, Roswell, like
very
he knows something."
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff there. I'll have to look into that, and he never did.
Yeah.
I
don't think they tell him.
Yeah, he's probably going to be running again, so that factors into what he could have said the first time, or even right now. If you want back into the club, and you want to work with the Pentagon and intelligence people in the future, you better keep your mouth shut now, I guess.
As Chuck Schumer warned you, they'll screw you 6 ways to Sunday if you mess with them. Remember that?
Yeah.
He wasn't wrong.
Well, what you probably know more about it if we have time real quick. Tell us about the Pentagon and their new formation of a committee to investigate, if not squelch, reports.
With Kristen Gillibrand,
Gillibrand,
is part of this. Gillibrand, yeah. They're putting together this. The Senate is urging. I mean, Mark Rubio kind of. I have to give him a little bit of credit. I mean, for sneaking that into the bill that he did, the 180 days and the push. I'm not a fan of him, but I will give him. Thanks for doing that. I don't know if it's going to get anywhere, but now we're here. We're past 180 days. We got the report. It's a snowball effect. I mean, Art Bell talked about this on his show. Once you let it out, it's a snowball. It's going to keep rolling, and it's going to keep going. They can't let it out. Well, now they have. They got to deal with it in some way and act like they are addressing it. And basically, it's interdepartment communications, what it mainly is. It's just so they can talk to the CIA, NSA, DIA, FBI, and correlate all these reports. The FAA, they can, because a lot of times these things happen, like the Navy classifies it, it's within the Navy. The DIA ain't looking at it. I'm saying they all keep their secrets. This is to bring it all together. But I really think it's more about keeping it all under one house and controlling the information.
Sad but true. We can't. The government has such a lousy track record of helping us learn the truth about things over the years, including the Kennedy assassination.
Right.
They're still withholding a ton of documents.
Trump did. Biden did. They both have pushed it back. We're never going to know.
Yeah.
I really don't think they'll ever release it.
Years from now, they'll release everything, after everyone's dead and gone. There's nothing you can do about it. That may be the same on UFOs. After 100 years, maybe they'll open some files.
Or it's connected. The assassination is connected to the UFO cover-up. And that's the main reason they got to keep it secret. I don't know. I mean, would they be able to try anybody now? I mean, if they came out with the JFK, assassination, and we had all the suspects and the information was there, and they're all dead.
One of the reasons they won't release documents is because their intelligence matters, and they don't want to reveal sources and methods and get people into trouble who were our spies or who blabbed.
They're all dead.
Yeah, but again, everyone's gone.
And if you're using the methods you were using in the 60s, dear God, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
If you haven't come up with anything new.
Yeah.
I think the Russians have figured it out by now.
Yeah, it's disappointing. It's discouraging. I don't know what.
Yeah, it's like we had the. I mean, it's a different take now with the way they're approaching it. They're like, we're taking it seriously. We have our best men on it, top men.
Yeah.
But like in '97, they had the Roswell conference. Remember that crap?
Oh,
Remember when they came out? We were like, this Project Mogul and is these crash test stuff. It was like the stupidest explanation ever. The guy who was telling it was full of crap. So they can't go back to that. They can't go back to that. So now what they do is, we don't know nothing about Roswell. Well, I don't know what that is, but we've seen them. Yeah, they're real. That's what they're doing. It's just like it's plausible deniability. Oh, we're interested now. We never knew about that stuff in the past. The thing is it's a snowball effect. They know it. At some point the truth will come out, not from them. I don't think. I think the truth will come out through people.
Now I'm gonna get all frustrated and upset. How am I supposed to sleep tonight? It's all your fault, sir. How dare you tell the truth about our government that they won't tell the truth?
I know. But, I have plenty of history to back me up here, non-UFO related, to tell you that they're not, how many secrets and lies that our government has done. Yeah, yes, way better than other governments in the world, I'm sure, that are totalitarian, like China, making people disappear and all that. But corporations control this government. Those corporations, according to Philip Corso and others, also control the UFO information. We gave it to them to keep it secret.
And
so
it's so buried and locked up within corporate vaults that the people who run the company today don't know about it.
Yeah. Or like I said, it's passed down to family members. That's what I thought. You got to see Taken by Spielberg. You got to see that. Yeah. And you got to see amazing stories.
Also, I've never had a UFO encounter, never seen an alien or a ship or anything like that. Sometimes I'm jealous when I hear other stories, and other times I think maybe I'm the lucky one that I haven't had a scary encounter or something that would have really rattled me. I don't have any visual sightings at all to report.
Yeah, I've had mine. My late friend Kevin Malik, I'll never forget when he told me he saw a UFO, this big UFO out a window. I think it was like an orange glowing ball. He instinctively hid behind a couch. My wife has always said if I saw one, I would hide because, the whole, alien abduction phenomenon. Travis Walton, I mean, list goes on. Terry Lovelace I've had on this show. Speaking of, in Arkansas, Devil's Den. You should check into that if you haven't read Terry Lovelace's book.
Is that in Arkansas?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard about that case. It's scary sounding.
It's very scary. Yeah. I mean, they came out of that almost dying. Radiation sickness for one. And horrible experience. And he was an abductee before that point. He didn't know at the time.
Yeah. That's only like 100 or so miles from where I live. And no, I'm not going to go looking. That story convinced me. I'm not going there. Sorry.
Yeah. But the thing is, that was a restricted area Terry went to. Somebody goes up there and mows this plateau. Government paid for. It has Native American lore to stay away from there. When people talk about the aliens like coming here in the 40s because or visiting us or making contact, my feeling is they've been here. They've been here since the beginning of man and before man, and they're still here. And that's why they have such a big interest in us when it came to the 1940s and the nuclear proliferation. It's a threat to them. They could just leave us and let us nuke each other. All right, science experiment over. The stupid humans killed each other. We left. But no, they have a stake in this. They have an interest here. That means they're here. They're living here.
We've got two things going in our favor, though. We have cell phones that are taking videos all over the world.
Exactly.
And we have the internet to put it on and share that with the world. And after a while, the government's probably thinking, how much longer can we keep
It's just a matter of time.
When, it's pretty darn obvious.
That's why I think the disclosure movement is nothing but plausible deniability to them keeping it covered up for 80, 90 years. It's like, oh, we weren't aware, but we did start looking into it now that it's their way of covering their butts because it's coming soon. There's cameras on doorbells. There's cameras on your phones. There's cameras everywhere. We are in a surveillance state, if you like it or not. We surveil ourselves. We put ourselves all out there, our lives on social media, and we're all over the place with cameras. We cover it on the World Wide Web of Weird every Sunday. UFO videos galore. Yeah, there's tons of hoaxes, but more often than not, I don't think they are. And, there's just the other day, I couldn't show the video because it was licensed video, but there's a good doorbell footage of a triangle UFO, very much like Terry Lovelace saw. You saw that. That's pretty incredible footage. I don't see that's faked. I don't know. That's not a drone, So it is a matter of time, and also they have to take in factor that the aliens are talking to other governments and have been for many, many years, China, Russia, what's to say they don't finally have enough and say, you know what, we know the aliens are here, and come out with it? I mean, in some sense, that's happened in some levels.
I wish we could have more openness. When the Russian government fell in 1989, 99,
oh, yeah.
They started to open up KGB files. Oh, boy, here's some creepy stuff. Somebody clamped that shut right away. And
probably us.
The end of glasnost and openness and all that stuff.
Probably us. Because we gave them billions of dollars under the Clinton administration
to keep it covered up and close their mouths and their files.
Yeah, why not? You listen. You want your money? You're going to shut up about this. We don't want that out there.
I've never been threatened. People do ask me, has the government ever confronted you? No,
They don't have to worry about you.
Putting the story is. together as best I can. And I'm not a threat to anyone.
No.
Never seen a UFO. Don't have any great contacts. But I can get my stories pieced together, and hopefully you'll find it an entertaining read, that you'll enjoy it, and really open some minds. As I point out, many a court case is won on circumstantial evidence alone. And that's kind of what we have here. I think I can convince you, if you're open-minded about it, with these books on Cape Girardeau and on the Eisenhower story, and coming up on Nixon and Gleason, which I found fascinating, and I think you will too.
I definitely got to get that book. It's something I've always been fascinated with. I was a huge fan of Amazing Stories, and when I watched that as a kid, I never knew about the Jackie Gleason thing. When I found out about that years later, the first thing I thought about was Amazing Stories. I got to find that episode.
If Jackie were here today, he'd be watching this show. He had a reputation for insomnia in New York City, and he would listen to Long John Nabel and his paranormal radio show. It was popular in New York, and he would even take a taxi and go over to the studio and sit in and take some calls on paranormal subjects, including UFOs. So Jackie was heavily into it, had a huge library. It's now all of his books, like 1,700, are in the University of Miami in a special reading room. You can read Jackie's UFO books. They preserve them quite well. He was something else. He was really into mysticism and the supernatural. And are we alone or not? According to his wife, Beverly, in this Inquirer article, Jackie felt that he had past lives and relived them in his sleep, sometimes in his dreams. And that's utterly fascinating, too.
I would have loved to have been able to meet him and talk to him. You know what we didn't even get into tonight? I just want to show really quick, too, is the Eisenhower doodles.
Okay, yeah.
Let me pull that up here. So there's also, we're running out of time, but I wanted to get to this. Oh, maybe not. Maybe it won't let me do it. Darn it. Why should it do that as a zip package?
For folks who don't know, Eisenhower was a doodler and would scribble on stationery during cabinet meetings. And some of his subject matters looks like either a cup or a saucer or a triangle-shaped craft or an alien-type being. You could argue one way or the other that there was a normal explanation, but it is interesting. Eisenhower liked to express himself. He even talked to Steve Lubkin, a brigadier general, supposedly about that alien ship sighting from 1952 when he was on the SS Roosevelt. There you go. There's an odd...
I know, but for some reason when it opened up in my photo things...
By the way, that
I gotta zoom
triangle that's
in.
flying through the air there.
Zoom in. Let's zoom in. Let me get, hold on. It's screwed up. I had to open up a paint thing just to get it to open up. Windows updated something.
That's a White House stationery from 52?
53.
53?
Yeah, from 53.
Yeah,
December 15th, 1953.
Yeah. And what is that? Is that a ship on top of another ship, or is that an airport runway, or what is that at the bottom? Pyramid shaped, I don't know. That's just one of his doodles.
There's one where you said I haven't seen it, but where he makes himself look like an alien.
Yes, that was a fascinating one. Wish you had it, but
yeah, I know.
Just take our word for it, folks.
Why wouldn't it open this Sting file? I had another one, but it wants to open up zip. I'm gonna have to figure that out later. Darn it! You go look it up. There's the scribbles or doodles of Eisenhower.
Yeah. If you Google Eisenhower doodle or UFO doodle by President Eisenhower, you'll find it. It'll come up on your search engine at home, and you can judge for yourself. It's, I think, another piece of the puzzle that Eisenhower left behind for us.
I was gonna say, and there's also, he has Laura Eisenhower is his
great granddaughter.
Great granddaughter has come out saying that the family knew of this.
You and I didn't even get a chance to go into another possible piece of the puzzle, utterly fascinating, the Georgia Guidestones, which I was surprised to find were originally to be set in Augusta, where Eisenhower went all the time on vacation. And so someone built this mysterious edifice out in a Georgia field where they got some cheap land. And it has all these mathematical equations built into it and statements in it that sound like alien advice on how to...
Reducing the population?
Yeah, that was a little scary, I'll admit. That was just advice, maybe guidance. Don't go beyond this population total if you want to be good stewards of planet Earth. Obviously, we blew through that population limit long ago, but some people find that ominous. I don't too much, but I write about this in the book, and I think it might have been connected to these Georgia State Troopers and his Augusta, Georgia ties, where he would vacation so much they built Eisenhower a home on the Augusta golf course. He was there so often.
I got to see that that documentary that's on, or isn't it like with the 11th Green or something like that on Amazon? I've seen it.
That's a fictional film of
That's what it is.
President Eisenhower recalling the time he met aliens.
Yeah, I got to see that.
They did a pretty fair job. The 11th Green, it's called, and I highly recommend that. You can get that on Amazon, along with my books, by the way. And if you want to leave good reviews, we got a lot of good, strong reviews. And we've got the Eisenhower book will be coming out on audio in January from Tantor Media. And we're looking for a TV production deal. I'd love to go to Mr. Spielberg and beg him to change his mind, but he has his own production company. He could farm it out to someone else if he really wants to, if you're listening. I
wonder why he feels to be over it.
Bringing his name up, but
hey, he deserves it.
He's a smart, very talented man, and I respect him very much.
Oh yeah, I know. I went to school for film, and Spielberg is one of my film icons that I can't help be a fandom of Spielberg. If I met him, I'd be like, oh my god.
There's another celebrity in this story in a remote, roundabout way. But when I was a boy in Cape Girardeau, I played Little League ball in the park, and one of my umpires was a man named Rusty, and we better know him as Rush Limbaugh, the famous broadcaster. Rush was a friend to my, Rush's father was a friend of my father. I never met Rush myself.
Yeah.
But on his radio show in 2006 or 7, I forget which, someone called in and said, Rush, what's up with this spaceship crash in your own hometown of Cape Girardeau? And instead of saying that's a lot of nonsense, get out of here with this foolishness, he said, there's more to this story than you might think. And he moved on to the next caller. So for a conservative man with a conservative audience, he gave you a clue. It's a very real story, and he heard about it. And I think it's something that will interest your readers. Mo 41, The Bombshell Before Roswell. There's a revised, updated edition that came out 1 year ago. You might want to get your hands on that. I think you'll enjoy that book very much.
Yeah, I did. And I love the way you write, the way you research. Like you said, you don't speculate. You get into the facts, the archives, the stories, and let the reader decide. And that's the best way. That's the best way because, they're all pieces of the puzzle. Everybody's experiences, all these stories, the archives, they're all pieces to a puzzle that we're trying to put together. I don't know if we ever will. I really don't. I hope so. I would love, to be a fly in the wall in that hangar when Eisenhower met those aliens,
or to get
to know what was said.
Footage. I'd love to see that footage leak. Yeah, wouldn't you? That would be totally awesome.
See, part of me wonders if they just eventually destroyed it.
Probably, or buried it
Sadly.
so far deep in the Pentagon basement that we'll never find out. But it's frustrating. It's exciting. We can put these pieces together like a jigsaw and come up to some fairly reasonable conclusions. And that is that we're being observed, we're being visited. It's, in a sense, not that big a deal. They're obviously not going to invade us or attack us. We're being probably protected by some fairly benign extraterrestrials who won't allow the dark ones in. So the basic thing is you just have to go about your business every day. Go to work, go to school, go to church if you're so inclined, and keep your eyes and ears open and keep your mind open. But it doesn't change anything that we are being observed. It's obviously something that is going to be kept at kind of arm's length, and we just have to put up with it in a sense.
I know with the whole, the Tic Tac video and all this stuff that came out, if you would have told me this 10, 15, 20 years ago, had that come out then, I think people would be like, oh my God, the media would have been nuts with it.
Yeah. 60 Minutes aired that and talked to some military people who said, we see these things every time we go out on our jet aircraft on missions every day. Said this on 60 Minutes,
And nobody cares.
Yeah. And it's starting to become, they can't deny it. And they're starting to admit, we're seeing technology that way outstrips anything America has. And obviously Russia and China, they don't have this kind of technology.
If this would have happened 20 years ago, it had been a much different scenario. People would have lost their minds over it a little bit.
And
the media
today,
would have.
the world's so crazy that some people just barely.
It's like, oh, okay.
How about that?
One more problem.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why now is the time that they're slowly covering their butts and releasing this. That's my theory on it. I don't think it's any honesty or like, oh, we're ready to come out. No. If you would, you'd be coming out with a lot more than that because there's a lot of history. There's a lot of cover-up. There's people who died. I mean, I'm sorry, people who were probably knocked off for this, murder committed by our government.
Probably.
Or at least corporate entities supplied by our government.
The college professor from the University of Miami who, before she died, gave a audio tape interview talking about her time as an intern with Albert Einstein, and they flew to New Mexico, saw the bodies, saw the debris, flew back, and she's been harassed and beaten. Her home ransacked, her car stolen. She had some evidence in her car. It's frightening what they did to her. I'm assuming almost all of it was related to her knowledge of what she saw over the years. I don't know if someone who knew about Roswell today would be harassed in such a manner, but they wanted her to keep her mouth shut. And
whatever she knew was too important.
Yeah. Largely she did until she gave this 1992 audio taped interview. And if you haven't heard it, rather, you should go online and look that up.
It was recently brought up again.
Intelligent source with very good credentials.
Yeah, it was recently brought up in the UFO community again as her story, and then Einstein knew. You got to think. I mean, if you have, I know we're running out of time here and we're going to go on, but if you had a UFO crash, who are you going to call on? You're going to call on the top minds, top men looking into it. And Einstein would have been right up there. They would have.
Yeah. He may have known about Cape Girardeau as well. That's even more sketchy, but I try to put that in a remake of my second book on the Cape Girardeau story called 3 Presidents, 2 Accidents. I'm revamping that, and I hope to get that out in the coming year.
All right. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being on the show. It's a true honor every time to have you on. I got to get you back on when you come out with the Jackie Gleason Nixon story. When you get that book out, let me know.
I enjoyed being on your show. It was a pleasure and a privilege.
All right, guys.
We didn't talk too much for Jamie to get a word in there if she has. Too bad. Too late now. Bye.
All right, guys. That's it for the show. We will be back next Sunday with guests. Let me see. I got my notes here. Where is it? Joe McQuillan, author of We're Not Done Yet, Pop, about his son. He lost his son, and his son communicated with him. It still communicates with him from the afterlife. It's a very touching story. We'll have him on next Sunday, hopefully. Same bad time, same bad channel. Check us out. Thank you to everybody who shares the show. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube, Facebook. Follow, subscribe, tell your friends, share the show out. Thank you to everybody who does. Thank you to my patrons who donate $2 a month. Does help pay the bills for the show. And don't forget, you always can do Super Chat on YouTube. That does help pay the bills, too. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great night. See you next week.